Chapter 3793. The girl said angrily, "In my heart, Tang Yu is the real Fox Emperor Phoenix." With that, she walked out of the cabin. With a frown, Hua Jin turned around and stared fixedly at her back view. His face was tense. Before Tang Yu's debut, he was a famous internet celebrity model. With his handsome appearance, he was the book model for the original Heavy Snow. In the official stage play, Tang Yu played the role of the male lead, Phoenix. In the movie and TV series, Hua Jin stood out from the netizens' votes and became the male lead candidate. Tang Yu, who was not popular, could only be reduced to a supporting role. Hua Jin's face was livid. He walked over and grabbed her hand tightly and said in a deep voice, "You're not allowed to go. You haven't made yourself clear. Let go of me." "What do you mean by, there must be a conspiracy?" The hull suddenly shook. The girl was standing on the edge of the boat. The boat had started moving, and the rope connecting the shore had long been cut. With the slight shaking, Hua Jin only felt a burst of instability under his feet. The girl who was pulled by his sleeve lost her center of gravity and fell toward the boat. "Ah!" The girl cried out softly and subconsciously reached out to grab everything in her hand. Suddenly, she caught Hua Jin's sleeve. Hua Jin only felt that he lost his center of gravity. The two of them fell heavily into the lake. In the lake, bubbles were rolling. Hua Jin was wearing a fiery red fur coat. In the cold lake, he was as gorgeous as a demon. He saw the girl sinking to the bottom of the lake and immediately reached out to grab her hand. The girl struggled hard. She didn't know how to swim at all. In her nervousness, a steady stream of lake water poured into her mouth and nose. It seemed that she was about to run out of oxygen. At this moment, Hua Jin swam to her side, raised the remaining water in his mouth, and passed it to her mouth. "Hua Jin? Hua Jin, wake up." Somehow, she felt like someone was slapping her face. "Hua Jin, wake up." Then, there was a huge pressure that kept suppressing her abdomen. Liang Yin only felt a surge in her chest. Then, almost reflexively, she opened her mouth and vomited the lake water that blocked her lungs and trachea. "Ugh! Great, great. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay." The assistant was ecstatic. She hugged her body and cheered for a while. "That's great. Hua Jin, you're finally awake. I thought something happened to you." Sob, sob, sob. "If anything happens to you, I really don't know how to explain it." Something happened? What if... She didn't understand. Also, who was the woman who was crying beside her ear? Why did she keep calling her Hua Jin? She wasn't... Liang Yin opened her misty eyes and felt a sharp pain in her throat. She coughed, but the voice that came out was that of an unfamiliar man. She widened her eyes in shock. Instinctively, she reached out to touch her throat, but she suddenly felt her Adam's apple. Adam's apple? Why did she have an Adam's apple? Liang Yin was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. When the surrounding staff saw that she had woken up, they immediately crowded around her and wrapped her in a huge blanket. "It's cold. Don't catch a cold." Chapter 3794. Hua Jin. Was it her imagination? Why were the staff surrounding her and calling her Hua Jin? "Wait," she said nervously. I... She wanted to say something, but she didn't know how to express herself. She actually wanted to ask what had happened. Where was this place and who was she? The last question was indeed a little unimaginable. However, even though she found it hard to understand, she still wanted to ask. Why did her voice change? Was she dreaming? Liang Yin stood up in a daze and instinctively wrapped the blanket tightly around herself. However, she heard someone say, "This girl doesn't seem to have woken up yet. What's going on? Why isn't the ambulance here yet? Could it be that something happened? If there's an accident, it'll be difficult to handle." Liang Yin looked in the direction of the voice and saw a group of people surrounding a person, discussing animatedly. She narrowed her eyes and saw a pair of familiar shoes. Before she could react, the staff pushed her and said, "Hua Jin, don't just stand there. Hurry back to the hotel and take a hot shower. If you fall sick from the cold, it'll delay the trip again." She was carried away in a daze. Behind her, after a round of emergency treatment, the girl who was surrounded finally opened her eyes slowly. The hot water is ready. Take a rest after you're done with your shower. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything after this. After the assistant finished speaking, he left. Liang Yin stood dumbfounded in front of the mirror. The scene before her eyes was so strange that her mind was in a mess and she couldn't get her head around it. She took another step closer to the mirror and reached out her hand in disbelief. When her fingertips touched the surface of the mirror, the cold touch made her retract her hand in shock. Hey! Liang Yin looked at the handsome face reflected in the mirror. Even though the lake water had washed away the makeup on her face, this beautiful face that most men didn't have was still a constant reminder that this wasn't her face. This wasn't Hua Jin's face. How did she become Hua Jin? What was going on? What was going on? Dream on. It must be a dream. Liang Yin laughed dryly for a while. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand and gently rubbed her face. She rubbed it with all her might. However, the extremely realistic feeling made her fall to the ground in shock. When she fell to the ground just now, the sharp pain from her crotch made her grimace in pain. She lowered her head and groped around the area of pain, only to feel two unfamiliar, soft things. The pain was indescribable because it was an unprecedented experience. An indescribable pain spread to the root of his thigh. Perhaps this was the pain in the balls that men often talked about. It was really painful, so much so that his mind went blank for a moment, and he couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Liang Yin pulled open her pants and took a look inside. Suddenly, she sucked in a breath of cold air. Hiss! She was so shocked that her eyes widened. At the first glance, she couldn't believe it, so she really reached out to touch it. The soft touch was unbelievably real. Furthermore, as she touched it, the item in her hand quietly changed. Chapter 3795. In the hospital, Hua Jin woke up slowly. What he saw was a snow-white world and a ward filled with disinfectant. He woke up amidst a cacophony of voices. When he opened his eyes, he saw an 4-drip hanging on the 4-stand. Then the nurses surrounded him. Seeing that he had woken up, one of the nurses said excitedly, "He's awake! He's awake! You're finally awake!" Hua Jin furrowed his eyebrows and opened his mouth. His nostrils and throat were in extreme pain. In his hazy vision, he saw a doctor walking over and asking anxiously, "Young lady, how are you feeling? Are you still feeling unwell?" "Young lady." Hua Jin opened his mouth and frowned unhappily. Although there were many people who would subconsciously mistake him for a woman when they saw him in the past. However, he was lying in the hospital now. No matter how bad the medical staff were, they should have some basic physiological knowledge, right? Hua Jin closed his eyes and felt that his throat was extremely dry. He cleared his throat subconsciously but suddenly heard a strange sound. Cough, cough. It was a crisp sound, but it was a soft sound that only a woman could make. His eyes widened abruptly and he sat up on the hospital bed like a carp. He looked around blankly and opened his mouth. Suddenly, he saw a blank face reflected in the doctor's glasses. The focus in Hua Jin's eyes instantly froze. He furrowed his brows and suddenly leaned forward towards the doctor. Seeing his abnormal reaction, the doctor also came over, puzzled. Hua Jin suddenly reached out and held the doctor's face with a smack. The doctor was so shocked that he trembled and almost lost his balance. Facing the doctor's glasses, Hua Jin finally saw his own face clearly. No, rather than saying that it was his face, it was more accurate to say that it was an unfamiliar face, a woman's face. It was not unfamiliar. Where had he seen this face before? However, the most important question was, why did he become a woman? Hua Jin reached out and touched his face in front of the glasses. The woman in the glasses had the same reaction. This was too surreal. It had become a woman. Hua Jin was dumbfounded. Seeing that his series of reactions were too abnormal, the doctors looked at each other nervously. What happened? There seems to be something wrong with the patient's mind. Hua Jin suddenly smiled stiffly. Yes, I must be dreaming. He pulled up the blanket and calmly laid down on the hospital bed. However, Just as he laid down, the back of his hand pressed against his chest. The strange softness made him sit up in shock. My breasts? He lowered his head in horror and rubbed his chest with both hands. The world in front of him started to twist and spin. Calm down! Hua Jin held his head and kept reminding himself. Calm down. Calm down, you must calm down. Liang Yin, who was standing in front of the mirror, took a deep breath. She held the mirror tightly, ignoring the fact that she was drenched. Even though she had been standing in front of the mirror for a long time, she still couldn't calm her rapid heartbeat. It was too unreal. Was she dreaming? However, according to a normal scientific explanation, it was impossible for a soul to be exchanged. Chapter 3796. Therefore, she must be dreaming. Liang Yin gently rubbed her chin and came to a conclusion. Since it's a dream, then let nature take its course. Just as well, I'll experience what it feels like to transform into a man. She picked up the towel beside her and was about to walk towards the bathroom. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. She turned around in confusion and walked towards the door. When she opened the door and saw the handsome young man standing at the door, her eyes lit up in an instant. Tang? The young man at the door smiled politely and humbly. Senior Hua Jin, I heard that you seem to have accidentally fallen into the lake. I was a little worried, so I came to take a look. Tang Yu! Liang Yin excitedly clasped her fists and looked at Tang Yu eagerly like an infatuated fan. Tang Yu, on the other hand, was really shocked. In his impression, Hua Jin had always been a cold and aloof person on set. After filming, he rarely stayed on set. It was said that he had a close relationship with the wife of the chairman of Shengyu Financial Group, the former Double Best Actress Award winner Yoon Shirshir. The two of them addressed each other as brother and sister. In the current entertainment industry, Hua Jin was considered a popular young actor. His appearance was more exquisite and beautiful than a woman's, coupled with his extraordinary acting skills, established his unshakable status as a young actor in ancient costumes. Therefore, some ancient costume dramas were willing to take the risk of breaching the contract to wait in line for Hua Jin's schedule. This was because some of the original works had a deadline on the contract. If they did not start filming within 5 years, then they would not wait for the deadline. From this, it could be seen that the influence of Hua Jin's fans was great. However, Tang Yu's performance in the crew had always been lukewarm. After all, Tang Yu and Hua Jin were not on the same level. However, now, this man who always felt unattainable was suddenly like a young girl, clenching her small fists and her eyes full of admiration for him. Tang Yu, I'm your fan. Tang Yu was a little flattered. He said a little awkwardly, Really? But I haven't officially debuted yet. This TV series is my ******* work. Liang Yin said seriously, although you haven't debuted yet, I've been paying attention to you for a long time. From the moment you debuted as a model to the auditions, and before that, you were a book model for many novels. You are the book model in the original novel of Heavy Snow. You are the one who played the role of Fox Emperor Fengji. Tang Yu was stunned. It turned out that, why was Senior Hua Jin so concerned about him? He even knows that I was once a book model for Heavy Snow? Can't be. It can't be? Tang Yu was a bit confused and couldn't react. Actually, I think that you should be the real male lead of Demon Eyes. I'm guessing that Hua Jin was able to become the male lead because of some shady dealings and unspoken rules. Tang Yu stared at him as if he had seen a ghost. Who would say that there was definitely something shady about being the male lead? Tang Yu felt that the way he opened the door must be wrong. Why was Hua Jin in front of him? It was as if he was possessed by a ghost. It was too strange. Senior Hua Jin, are you okay? While Tang Yu was in a daze, Liang Yin was looking at him with infatuation. God, little brother Tang Yu was so handsome no matter how she looked at him. Chapter 3797. For a long time, she could only look at him from afar, silently supporting him by buying his role-playing books and following his Weibo posts. Compared to Hua Jin, Tang Yu had been staying in the 2D fan circle. After making a name for himself as a book model, Tang Yu participated in many auditions and applied to the Film Academy. Until the audition for Demon Eyes, he was chosen by the director with his excellent performance and extraordinary talent. Plus, he was a book model in the original novel, so he had a certain fan base. Therefore, he got a supporting role. Tang Yu was flattered. After the audition, he was able to get a supporting role instead of a walk-on role without any lines. This already made him very encouraged. Liang Yin was also happy. Although she couldn't be the main lead, she was also excited that her idol, who she had been following for a long time, finally had a real work. Tang Yu, you can do it. Although you're not the male lead this time, I believe that if this TV series is aired, you'll definitely be famous. When that time comes, you'll become famous overnight, and many directors will want you to be the male lead. Tang Yu looked at Hua Jin, who was speaking in a girly tone. He always felt that this girly tone, when embraced by Hua Jin, actually, but, no, have, one, point, against, and, feeling. Perhaps, Hua Jin's appearance was too beautiful, so much so that it blurred the characteristics between genders. Tang Yu was a little shy as he thanked him. That, Senior Hua Jin, I'm very encouraged by your words. But, do you want to take a shower first? I see you're all wet. Tang Yu? Liang Yin suddenly stretched out her small hand carefully and gathered her courage to ask, Can I touch your hand? When Tang Yu heard this, he didn't know why, but he inexplicably got goosebumps. Hearing this from Hua Jin's mouth, he always felt strange. However, as a senior in the crew, Tang Yu didn't dare to disobey Hua Jin's request. Thus, he resisted the strange feeling and slowly raised his hand. When Liang Yin saw him raise his fair and smooth right hand, her heart suddenly started to beat with a thump 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 sound. Dong! Boom! Her face flushed red. She didn't dare to reach out her hand. It was hard to imagine that Tang Yu was right in front of her. How could she forget? This was a dream. She was now in Hua Jin's body. Moreover, no matter what she did in the dream, once she woke up and returned to reality, everything in the dream would not affect anything in reality. Liang Yin suddenly held his hand tightly. Gathering her courage, she clasped her fingers with Tang Yu's and pulled him into her embrace. Tang Yu was shocked. There was a height difference between Hua Jin and Tang Yu. Tang Yu's only flaw was that he was comparable to Hua Jin in terms of looks, but he was only 1.75 meters tall. When he stood next to Hua Jin, who was 1.8 meters tall, the height difference was still obvious. Therefore, with Liang Yin's tug, Tang Yu lost his balance and fell into her arms, caught off guard. Liang Yin held his face. She didn't know where she got the courage, but she closed her eyes, pressed Tang Yu against the door, and leaned over to kiss him. Oh my God. Chapter 3798. Liang Yin also felt that she had gone crazy. Otherwise, how could she have the guts to kiss the man of her dreams so directly? The former Tang Yu, for him, was unreachable. Little girls who chased after idols often secretly put postcards of their idols under their pillows. It was said that if you put a photo of your beloved under your pillow, you will meet him in your dreams. However, the frustrating thing was, no matter how many times she tried, she still didn't dream of Tang Yu. Now, she finally dreamed of him. Then, no matter what, Liang Yin must bravely put into practice what she wanted to do but didn't dare to do, and didn't have the opportunity to do so. Just that. This kiss scared Tang Yu, but it also scared her. The direct and real touch on her lips made her body even hotter all of a sudden. It was too real, as if it really happened. So much so that Liang Yin couldn't continue the kiss. She suddenly pushed Tang Yu away and looked at him in astonishment. She subconsciously stroked her slightly swollen lips because of the crush and asked in a daze, I'm not dreaming? Tang Yu looked at him in a daze but didn't dare to say anything. He was very suspicious that there was something wrong with Hua Jin's mind. So much so that he inexplicably pulled him into his arms and inexplicably kissed him, and finally, inexplicably pushed him away. What the hell was wrong with him? It was the first time Tang Yu was kissed by a man, so he was a little embarrassed. But he was afraid of Hua Jin's position in the crew, so he didn't dare to say anything. But he saw the man in front of him suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself hard. Slap. Tang Yu was stunned. One slap wasn't enough. Hua Jin slapped himself hard in the face again. Slap! A crisp sound. The burning pain spread from the facial nerves to the brain nerves, making her fiercely react. This wasn't a dream. This was... really? What happened in front of her really happened. Because of that accident, she fell into the water with the real Hua Jin. Her soul called out and her body swapped. She became Hua Jin, but what about Hua Jin? Could it be that he was now occupying her body? Senior Hua Jin, are you okay? Tang Yu asked carefully again. Liang Yin only felt dizzy. She barely held on to the door frame and smiled weakly. I'm fine. I think something's wrong with you. Do you have a fever? I'm fine. Liang Yin no longer had the courage to look at him. Instead, she abruptly retreated and slammed the door shut. Like a zombie, she plunged into the bathroom. The bathtub was already filled to the brim and overflowing. She stepped into the bathtub and allowed the warm water to drown her completely. Oh my God. Of it. Hurry up and change back. Change back. She hoped that when she opened her eyes again, she would be Liang Yin and return to her body. She didn't want to live the rest of her life as a man. In the ward bathroom, Hua Jin sat awkwardly on the toilet, looking at his pants that were pushed down to his knees. His legs were bare. Sob, sob, sob. His xiaobao was gone. Chapter 3799. Just now, he had the urge to go to the toilet. But when he went into the bathroom, he stood in front of the toilet and opened the lid. He fumbled for a long time but couldn't find anything. After being stunned for a long time, he realized that he was now a woman. There was no such thing as a man's crotch and penis. Although he was not used to it, Hua Jin had to accept reality. He sat on the toilet, opened his legs and waited for a while. When he heard the pitter-patter sound, he trembled and felt inexplicably wronged. He, a straight man like a steel bar, actually called out to his soul and changed into a woman's body. The problem was, wasn't this woman the one who made a big mistake during the visit? Tang Yu's diehard fan? And he didn't know if it was because of her young age, but it looked like she hadn't fully developed yet. Her breasts weren't particularly plump, and her legs were straight and slender, as thin as a bamboo pole. He couldn't help but miss the 8-pack abs and the Apollo's belt that he worked so hard to develop. No, he couldn't sit still and wait for death. He had to find a way as soon as possible. Hua Jin quickly calmed down. Now, the only way was to find Liang Yin as soon as possible. If he guessed correctly, that Liang Yin should be in his body now. In his vague memory, he seemed to see his original body wrapped in a thick blanket and sent back to the hotel. Based on this, he could infer that his original body was fine. His current body was in the hotel next to the set. But now, with his identity as Liang Yin, it was obviously a little difficult to sneak into the hotel and see Liang Yin, who had become Hua Jin. He was filming in the set, so it wasn't a big show. But when he went out, he was protected by 4 bodyguards. The hotel was also monitored 24 hours a day. At the end of the promenade, there were bodyguards from the crew responsible for the safety of the artists staying in the hotel. Not to mention him, even the most experienced paparazzi couldn't sneak in, unless he could turn into a fly. Otherwise there was no way he could sneak into the hotel. Looking for an agent? He had an agent's phone number? No. The company had given him a new manager, so they weren't close. If he suddenly told him that he was Hua Jin, and that he had swapped bodies with that girl named Liang Yin because of an accident, that manager would definitely think that he was a lunatic or a diehard fan who wanted to sneak into the cast, right? They would definitely treat him as a dangerous person and report him to the police. What should he do? Now, there was no way for him to get in touch with Liang Yin, nor was there any way for him to sneak into the film crew. Did he have to lie in the hospital and wait for Liang Yin to come looking for him? What if Liang Yin didn't come looking for him? After all, this stupid woman was Tang Yu's diehard fan. Once she got used to his body, she would be able to live intimately with the crew and Tang Yu. In that case, she wouldn't easily return his body, right? Most importantly, he would have an important scene soon, and this was the most important part of the entire script. That Liang Yin was not an actress, and if she acted on camera, she would definitely mess it all up. Hua Jin had a headache and frowned. He only felt that the future was uncertain. Chapter 3800. Hua Jin thought for a while and decided to give Yun Shishir a call. He wanted to go back to the Mu family first before making other plans. He fumbled in his bag and found a mobile phone. It was Liang Yin's mobile phone. However, the mobile phone had a 6-digit password. Hua Jin did not know Liang Yin's password. He tried a few of the more common passwords for lazy people, but it still showed that he had entered the wrong password. If the password was wrong, the mobile phone could not be used. Feeling disheartened, he entered his own birthday. He did not expect that the mobile phone would be automatically unlocked. Hua Jin did not have time to be shocked. He quickly entered Yun Shishir's number. The beeping sound from the other end lasted for a few seconds. Finally, the call was connected. Hello? Before he could state his identity, Gong Jie's distinctive cold voice was heard from the other end. Who is it? Gong Jie urged impatiently. Speak. Liang Yin reacted quickly. Where's Shishir? Who are you? I'm... Liang Yin furrowed her eyebrows. If she were to admit that she was Hua Jin in front of Gong Jie over the phone, Gong Jie would definitely think that he was a lunatic, hang up the call, and blacklist his number. This was the reaction that he had imagined Gong Jie would have. After all, in the world of ordinary people, it was really difficult to understand such a mysterious thing as soul exchange. Even until now, he found it hard to accept this reality. If he were to tell the truth to Gong Jie would definitely think that he was an idiot. Hua Jin pondered for a moment and said, Are you Gong Jie? Gong Jie was a little wary. Who are you? How do you know my name? I heard Shishir mention you often. You're Shishir's younger brother. I saw you at Shishir's wedding, but I don't think you have any impression of me. Gong Jie was silent but did not say anything. Hua Jin asked anxiously, Where's Shishir? I went out and forgot to bring my phone. No! How could he drop the ball at such a critical moment? Hua Jin felt so wronged that he was tearing up. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows suspiciously. What's the matter? It's like this. I broke my leg, but because I didn't have any money on me, I couldn't leave the hospital because I didn't pay the medical fees. So, Hua Jin was extremely embarrassed. This Liang Yin was really poor to the max. After rummaging through the entire bag, there was nothing but a wallet containing a $100 bill. Rather than saying that he was hospitalized, it would be better to say that he was detained in the hospital because he couldn't afford the medical fees. Is it convenient for you to transfer the money to me? For the record, I'm really not a liar. Gong Jie asked directly. Which hospital? Near the film city, Mercy Hospital. Got it. On the other end, the call was quickly hung up. Hung up? Gong Jie, that rascal, actually hung up the call? That was too rude. Hua Jin furrowed his eyebrows, his head full of question marks. Lying on the bed, he unlocked his phone and started to flip through the phone's directory. What surprised him was that the directory was empty. There was not a single note. Did she not have any relatives? What about Pang Yi? What about her classmates? None of them? He opened WeChat. The interface was also shockingly empty. Her friends column was empty as if it was isolated from the world. There was no trace of her background at all. Chapter 3801. Hua Jin was lying on the bed like a salted fish. Just when he was feeling lost and hopeless, he heard footsteps outside the door. Wow! Oh my God! He's so handsome! Is he a celebrity? He's so handsome and he's so tall. Do you dare to go up and hit on him? He's preparing to enter the ward. Is he a family member of one of the patients? Hua Jin sat up alertly and pricked up his ears to listen. When he heard the footsteps stopping at the door, he thought it was Liang Yin. He was so excited that he got off the bed and rushed to the door. The door opened at that moment. Hua Jin stared blankly at Gong Jie, who was standing at the door and looking at him coldly. The corners of his lips twitched a few times. Gong Jie looked down and sized up the girl, who only reached his chest expressionlessly. She had an exquisite oval-shaped face and a pair of watery eyes that stared at him as if she had seen a ghost. Why are you here? Gong Jie was slightly taken aback when he heard that. He crossed his arms and asked calmly, "You seem to know me?" Hua Jin straightened his body awkwardly, cleared his throat, and corrected him uneasily. "I wanted to ask, how did you know I'm in this ward?" He did not seem to have told him which ward he was in. Gong Jie looked at him as if he was an idiot. He sneered. "Sure doesn't know you at all." Gong Jie's gaze became sharper. "She doesn't even remember that she has a friend called Liang Yin." Hua Jin was completely stunned. Oh my god. This Gong Jie, he was really resourceful. In such a short period of time, he managed to find out Liang Yin's ward, Liang Yin's name, and Liang Yin's background through a phone number. It was too terrifying. Feeling a little embarrassed, Hua Jin rubbed his hands together and clenched them into empty fists. Clearing his throat, he asked tentatively, "Gong Jie, if I tell you something very fantastical and magical, will you be willing to believe me?" Gong Jie narrowed his eyes again. He knew his name. This woman, she didn't seem to be that simple. Along the way, his subordinates had investigated that this person called Liang Yin was just an ordinary student. But how did an ordinary student know Yun Shirshir's mobile number and even call out his name the moment she heard his voice? If she only knew Yun Shirshir's name, he might just suspect that she was one of those paparazzi or a diehard fans. But if she called his name, that would be unusual. Therefore, he had to get to the bottom of this person's background. He crossed his arms casually and said coldly, "First, you have to tell me what's going on. Otherwise, how can I believe you?" Hua Jin asked vaguely, "Do you think there's such a thing as soul exchange in this world?" Gong Jie frowned and grabbed Liang Yin's collar. He asked impatiently, "Are you kidding me?" Hua Jin was so frightened that his expression changed and his teeth started to chatter. Look. He didn't believe it. If it was any normal person, they wouldn't believe it. Moreover, he was already afraid of Gong Jie. Usually, he would avoid Gong Jie. Now that Gong Jie was acting up, he was so scared that he didn't dare to move. "Why are you shaking?" Gong Jie shouted. "Don't shake." Chapter 3802. "You're filming, right?" Gong Jie narrowed his eyes coldly and his voice was even colder. "Or are you playing with me?" Hua Jin felt aggrieved as he thought to himself, "I wish I was filming too. The point was, it wasn't. Spit it out. I'm impatient and my time is limited." Hua Jin mustered up his courage, swallowed, and said with difficulty, I'm Hua Jin." Gong Jie's expression finally loosened a little. However, the expression on his face was not one of surprise, but of disbelief. After a while, he snorted coldly, "Lunatic." With that, he tugged at his tie with an ashen face, turned around, and was about to leave. Gong Jie thought that Hua Jin must have set up this trap to prank him. He would not let this guy have his way. Seeing that he was about to leave, Hua Jin went up to him in a panic and struggled to keep up with him. As he tried to catch up with him, he tried his best to explain, "Gong Jie, listen to me." The reason why it was difficult was because Gong Jie's legs were too long. With a height of 1.9 meters, just his pair of long legs alone would bring him closer to 1 meter with every step he took. If it was the previous Hua Jin, he could still manage to keep up. The problem was that with his 1.63 meters height, there was a height difference of 30 centimeters. Gong Jie walked while he had to jog to keep up with him. "You might not believe me if I say this, but no matter who it was, it would be very difficult to explain it clearly. But I'm not lying to you, and I'm not playing with you. I'm really Hua Jin." Gong Jie ignored him. He thought that this girl who was jumping up and down like a little rabbit was Hua Jin's accomplice to prank him. After all, no matter who it was, they wouldn't believe in something like soul swapping. Hua Jin panicked and reached out to grab his arm. However, he had apparently forgotten that Gong Jie was a clean freak and never liked anyone touching him. Gong Jie turned around abruptly and grabbed Hua Jin's collar as if he was grabbing a rabbit's ear. He lifted him up by the collar of his hospital gown. Hua Jin struggled for a moment and instinctively tried to push him away. Because of the Gong Jie's action, the collar got stuck on his neck and he found it hard to breathe for a moment. Gong Jie pushed him against the wall, his big hand easily clasping his neck. Gong Jie did not use any force. He just fixed him to the wall. Gong Jie's tone was unfriendly, and his expression was cold. His eyes were like those of a ferocious beast, and he stared at him with burning eyes. Damn it, where is Hua Jin? Hua Jin's eyes widened in shock. He pointed at himself and explained in a panic, Me, I'm Hua Jin. I don't remember that guy having breasts. Gong Jie looked at him disdainfully from head to toe and asked, You said that you're Hua Jin. Do you have any evidence? Hua Jin gulped with difficulty. His throat moved as he said aggrievedly, What evidence do you want? What evidence can you find to prove that I'm telling the truth? Gong Jie could not be bothered to waste time with him. Chapter 3803. Gong Jie stopped in his tracks abruptly. His brows furrowed as he turned around abruptly. His vulture eyes were fixed on Tang Yuanchu. Dangerous and intimidating. What did you say? Hua Jin shrunk his shoulders but mustered up his courage to say, Well, I still remember when we were playing cards and you and I lost. Muyaja made us play a paper towel game just to prank us. Speaking of this, Hua Jin was also very embarrassed. However, he had to say it. Well, at that time he wanted to describe the details. Gong Jie felt extremely nauseous when he mentioned that incident. He resisted the urge to vomit and covered his mouth. His face was ashen as he said, Shut up! Hua Jin then shut his mouth obediently and didn't dare to say another word. Gong Jie stood where he was and sized up the unfamiliar girl in front of him in disbelief. To be honest, no one would believe that a girl who came out of nowhere and told him that she was Hua Jin and that their souls had swapped. Even though Hua Jin had mustered up his courage to mention that incident. However, Gong Jie still found it hard to believe. After all, if he believed it and was tricked by Hua Jin, this incident would definitely be a stain that he would never be able to erase. Gong Jie lifted his handsome face and sized him up again. Suddenly, he said word by word, I'm warning you one last time. Tell me the truth, or else I'll really kill you. Hua Jin was trembling in fear when he saw his kind gaze. Even so, he still pinched his palms hard and used the last of his courage to say with difficulty, I'm really Hua Jin. I'll have more chances to prove this to you. What's true can't be false, and what's false can't be true. If I'm lying to you, you can do whatever you want. Others may not know, but I know what kind of person you are. You are the future successor of the Hurricane Group. I can offend anyone, but I wouldn't dare to offend you. I can joke around with anyone, but I wouldn't dare to joke around with you. After saying that, Hua Jin clenched his fists tightly and bit his lips stubbornly, feeling wronged. If he had any other way, he wouldn't tell Gong Jie about this. He didn't know if he would have to guard this body for the rest of his life after his soul had swapped bodies. If he really couldn't return to how he was before, he would definitely break down. Moreover, he might even be mocked by others. Furthermore, after living as a man for more than 20 years, he had no way to adapt to suddenly becoming a girl. Gong Jie looked at him deeply and suddenly said, You'd better be sure that you're telling the truth. Hua Jin nodded vigorously. Gong Jie pursed his thin lips and moistened the tip of his tongue. He looked around and suddenly said, I've already paid for your medical fees. Well? Hua Jin took a step forward and asked, Can you not mention this to Shirshir for the time being? Why? Because, Hua Jin said awkwardly, it's better not to let others know about this for the time being. Initially, he didn't want to tell Gong Jie about this. Initially, he wanted to find Shirshir and ask her to pay for the medical fees first. Then, he would make other plans. She did not expect Gong Jie to pick up her call. He even made a show of investigating the matter and found his way to the hospital. Chapter 3804. While Hua Jin was having a headache, Gong Jie asked unhappily, What about me? What? Gong Jie raised an eyebrow. I don't belong to the category of others? Or do you mean that I'm special? Gong Jie said in a disapproving tone, Why should I know about this? Hua Jin was dumbfounded. I don't have the patience to deal with this. Gong Jie crossed his arms and said, Now, I've already paid for your medical fees. You're on your own now. Hua Jin was furious when he heard that. Hey, don't you have any sympathy at all? I'm already in such a pitiful state. A man turned into a woman, and you still have such a cold attitude. Hey, don't you have any sympathy at all? He clenched his fists tightly in anger. His face was red, but his eyes were black and shiny. When Gong Jie heard that, he suddenly burst out laughing. For a moment, Hua Jin could not tell if the man was sneering or mocking him. He was so angry that he forgot about Gong Jie's status as he strode toward him, raised his fist, and swung it at him. Gong Jie caught his fist and snorted disdainfully. Are you crazy? He dared to hit him. Did he want to die? He gathered his strength in an instant. Hua Jin felt that his fist was tightly wrapped by Gong Jie's large palm. Then, his knuckles felt like they were going to be crushed by his huge grip. Hey, pain. Gong Jie felt that he could easily flatten the little girl in front of him with one hand. Hua Jin was terrified. He quickly begged. You let go. Gong Jie snorted coldly. Why should I? Who was the one who wanted to hit me just now? I was wrong. Hua Jin gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. Gong Jie then let go of his hand and snorted disdainfully. He stuffed his hands into his trouser pockets and pondered for a while before his thin lips suddenly curved. Back then, when Yun Shishir acknowledged Hua Jin, he was already very unhappy. Why? She already had him as her younger brother, but she actually acknowledged another one. Then what was he? For a moment, he felt as if he had fallen out of favor. However, things were different now. Gong Jie smirked and ruffled Hua Jin's hair. Looking straight into his eyes, he asked, What do you want now? I want to change my clothes first, then I'll make other plans. Aha, all right. Gong Jie turned around and left. While Hua Jin was still frozen in place, Gong Jie turned around. Seeing that he did not follow, he said unhappily, What are you still standing there for? Oh. Hua Jin then hurried to catch up with his footsteps. Outside the hospital, a sports car was parked. Hua Jin was wearing a thin hospital gown. When he got into the sports car, he was shivering from the cold. Push it up. Seeing that he was wearing thin clothes, Gong Jie did not say anything. He pressed a button and the sports car's hardtop opened up quickly. What a disgrace. Hua Jin covered his face silently. Gong Jie glanced at him and caught sight of a strange protrusion. When he took a closer look, his handsome face could not help but blush strangely. You? Hua Jin scratched his head and saw Gong Jie's gaze on his chest. He raised both hands and touched it, but Gong Jie looked away awkwardly. You're not wearing underwear? Underwear. Chapter 3805. In the hotel. Hua Jin stood in the bathroom and looked at the full-length mirror. He was hesitant about whether he should take off his clothes. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Hua Jin walked over warily and heard a woman's voice. Hello, room service. We have bought the underwear you asked us to buy. I didn't ask you to buy it. It was ordered by the gentleman in the same room as you. His surname is Gong. Hua Jin endured it and opened the door. He saw the room service pass him 2 exquisitely wrapped packages. When he saw the 2 black lace-edged bras in the packaging, his heart was in turmoil. He was going crazy. How humiliating. Hua Jin endured the awkwardness and tried to fit the underwear in front of his chest. However, he couldn't put it on. After changing his clothes in a hurry, Hua Jin opened the door and walked out. Perhaps it was because he had always been used to being a man, but even if his upper body was exposed, he would not feel the slightest bit ashamed. After all, this wasn't his body. Hua Jin had just opened the door when he suddenly came to his senses. He had blocked his bowels. After all, this wasn't his body. Then, would Liang Yin, whose soul had been swapped into his body, not cherish his body and do whatever she wanted? When he thought of this possibility, Hua Jin was so angry that he felt a dull pain in his chest. He went back to the room and endured the awkwardness as he put on the underwear. When he came out again, Gong Jie was standing at the door with his arms crossed. Looking at the ashen face of the man, He enjoyed the latter's embarrassment. Now, he really believed that the girl in front of him was acting like a man. In addition, she spoke in Hua Jin's usual tone. He really believed in the fact that their souls had been swapped. This world was truly a fantasy. So far, there had been many things that science couldn't explain. Many people categorized these things as supernatural. Even many staunch atheists firmly believed that there were no ghosts in this world. However, Gong Jie had always been in awe of such phenomena that science couldn't explain. You may not believe it, but you must revere it. That was because humans were so insignificant. Science was only the conclusion of human research. It was not broad enough to encompass the entire world and universe. Perhaps many seemingly absurd things really did exist. Hua Jin braced himself and stood in front of him. He stretched out his hand and asked, "Can I borrow your phone? For a while?" "What? I'll make a call to my cell phone." Gong Jie took out his phone and waved it in front of his eyes. Hua Jin reached out to grab it, but he raised it so high that Hua Jin grabbed nothing. "What are you doing? You haven't answered my question." Gong Jie asked. "I asked you before, where's your body now?" It was awkward to be asked this way. Hua Jin licked his lips and replied, "If I'm not wrong, No, my body should still be on set." "Set?" "Yeah, we fell into the water together. After that, I was sent to the hospital. However, I still had some consciousness in my coma. I saw her being escorted back to the hotel by my assistant. She should be fine." "I see." Chapter 3806. Hua Jin touched his nose, tried to recall, and nodded. "Yeah." Gong Jie's lips curled into a sinister smile. "That's simple. Find that girl and fall into the water again. Maybe you'll be able to return to your bodies." Hua Jin's lips twitched violently. "I'm not a good swimmer, but that girl is even worse. It's easy to lose your life. Okay?" Gong Jie didn't think much of it. "If I become a girl, I'd rather die. You only know how to gloat." "Humph." Hua Jin snorted coldly and spread out his hands. "Lend me your phone. Take it if you can." Gong Jie still held the phone high. Hua Jin raised his head to look at the phone held high above his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught sight of a stool at the side. He walked over, moved the stool over, and placed it in front of Gong Jie. Stepping on the stool, he snatched the phone from the man's hand. "Gong Jie, aren't you childish? You're playing such a childish game with me." Gong Jie raised his almond-shaped eyes slightly. When Hua Jin wasn't paying attention, he stretched out his long legs and lightly hooked the stool leg with the tip of his toes. The stool shook, and Hua Jin's body swayed violently for a while. He couldn't stabilize his center of gravity and leaned back suddenly. "Ah!" Hua Jin waved his hands exaggeratedly, trying to maintain his center of gravity. Gong Jie saw that he was really going to fall, and with the corner of the table behind him, he was worried that he would cause an accident. Hence, he stretched out his hand and grabbed his waist. Hua Jin's body followed the inertia and fell on him. Dong. Hua Jin's body fell hard on Gong Jie's body. Even though his entire center of gravity was on Gong Jie, the latter was still as steady as Mount Tai and didn't move an inch. He easily lifted him by the collar with one hand. "Hurry up and call them." Gong Jie kicked the stool to the side angrily. Hua Jin was furious. This Gong Jie is too despicable. Taking advantage of the fact that he had become a woman, he purposely pranked him. Damn it! Hua Jin was angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. He could only grumble in his heart and secretly make up some Gong Jie. Then, he took his phone and walked to the balcony. In the night breeze, the phone rang for a long time. The call was finally connected, and he heard a familiar voice that sounded a little timid. "Hello?" Hua Jin was stunned for a few seconds. Humans are really strange creatures. He was used to hearing his own voice, but once he switched to someone else's point of view and heard his own voice, he found it somewhat unfamiliar. It was slightly different from the voice he usually heard. "Liang Yin." Hua Jin called her name angrily. "Where are you now?" "It's you." On the other end, Liang Yin, who had transformed into Hua Jin, was obviously furious. "You stole my body, shameless." "Ha!" Hua Jin sneered. Are you kidding me? I want to steal your body? You don't have breasts or buttocks, and you're poor. You're not a rich family's young miss, and you're not a peerless beauty. Why should I give up on being a big star and become an unknown poor woman? On the other end, Liang Yin was clearly infuriated. Any girl would be infuriated if they were criticized like this. Chapter 3807. Pervert. Pervert. This woman actually dared to speak to him like that. Hey, watch your words. What do you mean by pervert? I think you're the pervert. In order to get close to your idol, you actually pretended to be my fan to attend a visit. I think you're just a brainless fan who would do anything to get close to your idol. I saved you. Not only did you not thank me, you even scolded me? When I saw you fall into the water, I dared to step on you and leave you to fend for yourself. Hua Jin had a belly full of anger because of this incident. When this girl fell into the water, he should have abandoned her and left her to fend for herself. Why did he have to dive into the water to save her? If he didn't meddle in other people's business and play the good guy, perhaps such a ridiculous thing wouldn't have happened. Why did he have to suffer like this? This Liang Yin actually dared to humiliate him like this. Alas, Liang Yin had to accuse him instead. Feeling frustrated, he said, "You're such a die-hard fan." Liang Yin retorted, "I'm not a brainless fan. If you're not a brainless fan, then what are you? But of all people, why did you chase Tang Yu who just debuted not long ago? Ha! You must be blind. Shut up." On the other side, Liang Yin was so angry that her face turned red. She said angrily, "You're not allowed to insult Tang Yu. So what if I insult him?" Hua Jin obviously didn't take her words seriously. When Liang Yin heard this, she said angrily, "Hua Jin, I'm warning you. Right now, in the eyes of others, I'm the real Hua Jin. Your reputation and status are all in my hands. If you dare to hurt people again, I'll create a lot of gossip for you tomorrow." When Hua Jin heard this, his lungs almost exploded with anger. "You dare? See if I dare or not." When Hua Jin heard this, he suddenly curled his lips. "All right, if you dare to create a lot of gossip for me, of course, I won't let you take advantage of me so easily." "What do you mean?" Hua Jin said proudly. "I'm with a man now. If you dare to act recklessly, I don't mind showing you what real recklessness is." Liang Yin. He was instantly terrified. Hua Jin heard no response from the other side and guessed that Liang Yin had given in. After all, girls were timid and easily frightened by a few words. Hua Jin took a deep breath. Holding the phone, he asked Liang Yin, "Where are you now?" "I don't know. I think it's in a hotel." "Did the assistant send you back to the hotel?" "Yes." "All right, I'll go find you." Hua Jin rubbed his chin and said to her, "Stay in the room and don't move. Why should I listen to you?" When Hua Jin heard this, he could not help but laugh. This girl's temper seemed to be extraordinarily stubborn. Hua Jin leaned against the railing and asked meaningfully, "Do you like my body that much?" On the other end, Liang Yin was sitting on the bed. She did not know why, but when she heard Hua Jin's words, her face seemed to be on fire. I don't." Until now, she had not dared to take a shower. She did not know how to face this body. Hua Jin said, "That's it then. Wait for me. We'll discuss what to do now." "All right." Although she was unwilling, Liang Yin still agreed. Chapter 3808. As he looked around, there was a lingering fog, and it looked as though it could swallow the mountains and rivers. He walked over and said to Gong Jie, "Lend me your car." Gong Jie glanced at him. "Do you have a driver's license?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" Gong Jie sized him up. "You don't have this girl's driver's license, so you're driving without a license." Hua Jin. He pondered for a moment. Just when he was about to speak, Gong Jie knew what he was going to say and immediately rejected him. "Don't even think about it. You know what I'm going to say? You just want me to be your driver for free." Gong Jie snorted arrogantly. "Who do you think you are? Why should I listen to your orders?" Hua Jin begged him nicely, "Gong Jie, please. This matter is very important to me." "You're worried that Liang Yin will mess around?" "Yeah." That was part of it. You just have to drive me this time. I'll settle the rest myself. Gong Jie was still unmoved and put on an "I'm not close to you" expression. Hua Jin said angrily, "Forget it. I'll take a cab myself." As he said that, he turned around and walked towards the door. Gong Jie asked faintly behind him, "Do you have any money on you? Also, are you sure you can sneak into the hotel if you go to the film set now?" Just these two questions had stumped Hua Jin. He had a headache. He turned around gloomily, looking extremely dispirited. "You're not helping me again." Gong Jie heard that and said, "It's not impossible for me to help you, but there are conditions." Hua Jin felt a little uneasy when he heard that. Not everyone could afford to owe Gong Jie a favor. This condition must be very harsh. However, he was still mentally prepared. "Go ahead." Gong Jie stood up, walked up to him, and said slowly, "In the future, when I'm around, you're not allowed to call Shershir sister in front of me." Hua Jin was dumbfounded. Gong Jie was a little displeased when he saw his expression. "What's wrong? Can't do it? Just this?" Hua Jin frowned. "It's that simple? What else can I do? Do you think I can sever the relationship between you and Shershir?" Gong Jie had been unhappy about this for a long time, especially when he was around. Hua Jin affectionately called Yun Shershir's sister. He had always been brooding over it. Hua Jin nodded and said, "Okay, deal. It's settled then." Gong Jie said in a sinister tone, "If you dare to disobey, I'll teach you a lesson." All right. Young Master Jie." Hua Jin rolled his eyes hard in his heart. However, seeing that he had agreed so readily, Gong Jie felt satisfied. Half an hour later, Gong Jie sent Hua Jin to the hotel. Although the hotel was heavily guarded, for someone like Gong Jie, no matter how strict the security was, it was useless. Gong Jie also fulfilled his promise and sent Hua Jin to the door of his room before leaving. Hua Jin stood at the door and pressed the doorbell. After a while, he heard Liang Yin standing at the door. She asked warily through the door, "Is that you?" Hua Jin rolled his eyes in his heart. Couldn't she just look through the peephole? Was the peephole on the door for decoration? Had this moron never stayed in a high-end hotel before? "Yes, it's me. Open the door." Chapter 3809. Seeing that he had locked the door, Liang Yin became alert. She shrunk her shoulders and looked alert. "Why did you lock the door?" Hua Jin frowned. He turned around and looked at her with disdain. "Why? You look like I'm going to do something to you." Liang Yin instinctively took half a step back and covered her chest. This seemed to be a woman's subconscious reaction. Because she had been soaked in water, she was worried that her insides would be exposed. She obviously hadn't accepted the fact that their souls had been swapped. Hua Jin reminded her kindly, "Please, you're my body now. I'd be crazy to do anything to my body." "Ah." Hua Jin looked at her body again. To be precise, it was his body. He saw that it was still wet. His hair was half dry, but his clothes were sticking to his body. He raised his eyebrows suspiciously. "Don't tell me. You haven't taken a shower yet? Damn it." This was simply torturing his body in disguise. Liang Yin snapped out of her daze at once. Her gaze landed on Hua Jin, and her eyes burned with passion. You've taken a shower?" She rushed over to Hua Jin and grabbed Hua Jin's collar. Unfortunately, Liang Yin was Hua Jin's body now, and Hua Jin had shrunk from his 1.8-meter-long legs into a cute girl. With Liang Yin grabbing his collar so tightly, he looked like a little white rabbit being lifted up. He looked powerless. Hua Jin didn't have any strength to retaliate. He struggled and said angrily, "What are you doing? Don't tell me you saw everything?" Liang Yin was infuriated. She glared at him and roared, "Don't tell me you've seen my body?" Hua Jin thought that this question was ridiculous. Have you ever seen someone bathe with their eyes closed? Liang Yin was so angry that she broke down. She said in despair, "So you've seen everything on my body? Nonsense. Otherwise, do you want me to get wet and catch a cold?" Hua Jin said angrily, "I'm the one who despises her. She doesn't have a good figure, and she doesn't have any bright spots. She's an eyesore. You, Liang Yin couldn't refute. She was so angry that her eyes turned red. Her pair of eyes that were more charming than a woman's suddenly glistened with tears. She felt extremely wronged. Hua Jin was dumbfounded when he saw himself crying. Why are you crying? You've seen me naked. Liang Yin was so angry that she fell to the ground, tears and snot running down her face. In all my life, other than me, no one has ever taken advantage of me like this. Most importantly, this vile man actually said that her body was an eyesore, stinging eyes. Unable to bear the humiliation, she burst into tears. Hua Jin had a helpless look on his face. Did she think he wanted it? Don't cry. It would have been better if Hua Jin hadn't comforted her. Once he did, Liang Yin burst into tears even more unbridled, like a stormy sea. Hua Jin was so frightened that he shuddered. He instinctively looked in the direction of the door, worried that her cries could be heard outside. He crouched in front of Liang Yin in a fluster and begged for mercy. Okay. Don't cry. Okay? Your body is very beautiful. Your boobs are very big, your legs are very long, and your waist is very thin. I've never seen a woman with such a good figure. It would have been better if he hadn't said anything. What was that saying? Chapter 38:10. Liang Yin's tears fell uncontrollably. She hugged her shoulders and cried pitifully. Hua Jin held his forehead in pain. Is it that important to let someone see your body? Of course it's important. Liang Yin had received a traditional family education since she was young. Her parents had always taught her that girls should have self-respect and self-love, especially when it came to their first night. She could only give it to her husband. As for her own body, other than her husband, once it was seen by any other man, it would become worthless. If you see it, I'll be worthless. Liang Yin cried sadly. My mom said that if my body is seen by another man, and that man is not my husband, my body will be dirty. What era are we living in now? Hua Jin said disapprovingly. This isn't a male-dominated society. Why does your mom still have such a backward mindset? Liang Yin's tears streamed down her face. Hua Jin was helpless, but he had to coax her nicely. All right, don't cry. He wiped her tears and said, Who said that a girl's body is worthless if someone sees it? Girls are only beautiful if they are more confident. Who said that a girl's self-worth needs to be reflected in this? Moreover, this was an accident. If I don't shower, what if I get a fever? Won't you be the one who gets hurt? Liang Yin stopped crying and looked at him in surprise. She was shocked because she didn't expect Hua Jin to comfort her so seriously. Hua Jin continued, Moreover, if you have a boyfriend in the future and you give your first time to him, and he doesn't want you anymore, you won't kill yourself because you lost your virginity, right? Liang Yin listened quietly and didn't say a word. I've seen many girls who value their chastity. Even though the man wasn't suitable for them, they would insist on marrying him just because he was their first man. In the end, they wouldn't be happy for the rest of their lives. Hua Jin continued, It's best for girls to be independent. They don't have to depend on anyone to live. Why should they use these rules to restrict themselves? When Liang Yin heard this, she gradually stopped crying. When Hua Jin heard this, he patted her head. However, he felt that she was very obedient. After all, he was touching her head. Liang Yin's expression didn't change, but her heart was in turmoil. She didn't expect that Hua Jin would tell her this. All this while, her family had taught her to restrain herself. However, Hua Jin told her that girls needed to be more independent. They needed to know how to protect themselves, but they also needed to know how to pursue their own happiness. There was no need to restrict themselves too much. After thinking about it rationally, he realized that what Hua Jin said made sense. He had no reason to look at her body. However, given the current situation, there was nothing he could do. Liang Yin pursed her lips, feeling a little guilty. She felt that she was making a mountain out of a molehill just now. Although she still felt a little awkward, she gradually calmed down. In the future, if you want to take a bath, I'll do it, Liang Yin said. When Hua Jin heard this, The corners of his lips twitched violently. Why? Because this is my body. Oh. Hua Jin nodded and asked meaningfully, so in the future, I'll do it for you when you take a bath? Chapter 38:11. Hua Jin, on the other hand, was very serious. He pointed at her and said, because this is my body. No way. Liang Yin rejected him right away. Thinking about it, a grown man giving her a bath, no matter how she thought about it. That scene was too strange. Hua Jin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Missy, don't you think your double standard is a little too much? Liang Yin blushed and said, a woman bathing is different from a man bathing. How is it different? There? Liang Yin lowered her head. Her face was so red that it looked like blood was dripping from it. You have to bathe there too. Nonsense. Hua Jin said awkwardly. Men have to bathe there too. Both of them kept quiet. Liang Yin stared at him anxiously. Hua Jin also looked awkward. Ahem. How about this? Hua Jin cleared his throat and said seriously. At most, when I bathe, I won't be so serious. I mean, it'll be lighter. He said it very vaguely. Liang Yin blushed even more. Hey. What? You're not allowed to touch places that you shouldn't touch. Do you think I want to touch it? Who knows? Hua Jin blushed even more. He was extremely embarrassed. Although I've always been curious about what it's like to be a woman, I'm not happy about it at all. I'm also a victim. Don't make it seem like I'm persecuting you. Liang Yin said unhappily. If you dare to touch places that you shouldn't touch, I'll touch them too. You can touch them. That's great. Liang Yin crossed her arms and snorted. I used to be curious about what it's like to have a man's balls crushed. You? Hua Jin widened his eyes. He pointed at her and said sternly, you'd better not touch it. It'll kill someone. Kill someone? Really? That place is the most vulnerable part of a man's body. Just imagining it made Hua Jin feel as if he had experienced it himself. He had goosebumps all over. That was the most vulnerable part of a man. In the past, when he was filming, the staff in charge of the wire was careless and he almost fell into the lake. He accidentally hit the railing by the lake. Although he didn't hit the bullseye, he almost lost his family line. Even though it was just a graze, it still hurt so much that he wanted to die. In front of the visiting media, he had to force a smile and pretend that nothing had happened. That feeling was simply unforgettable. Then, Liang Yin suddenly said, let's make a deal. What? You're not allowed to use your hands. Hua Jin sighed. Liang Yin added, oh, right. If you're bathing, try not to use the bathtub. Why? It's hands, okay. I to the. Then what are you waiting for? Hua Jin urged her. It'll be bad if you catch a cold. My body is weak to begin with. Hearing this, Liang Yin stood up slowly and stood at the bathroom door. She was still hesitant. Hua Jin walked behind her and kicked her in. Wash yourself clean. Come out clean and smelling good. You actually kicked. Chapter 38:12. In the shower room, Liang Yin looked at the overflowing water and took several deep breaths. Earlier, when she entered the pool, her clothes floated up and Liang Yin was so shocked that she almost fell out of the bathtub. To be honest, she had never seen a mature man's body. In the end, she didn't expect that a man's body had such a structure. To be honest, it looked weird. The first time she saw a man's body, Liang Yin felt that a woman's body was more pleasing to the eye. Liang Yin endured the awkwardness and finished her shower. However, she took this opportunity to enjoy the bathtub and soak in it to her heart's content without any burden. When she came out of the shower, she pushed open the door and walked through the fog. In the cold room, Hua Jin was leaning on the sofa and had fallen asleep. Liang Yin walked over softly. Perhaps it was because of her body. When she looked over, it was as if she was looking at herself from God's point of view. Hence, she was very careful and didn't want to wake him up. Liang Yin squatted in front of Hua Jin and sized him up calmly. Rather than saying that she was sizing him up, it was better to say that she was sizing herself up. So this was how she looked like. Felt different. It was different from when she used the mirror to take selfies with her cell phone. It seemed that she was slimmer and prettier. She didn't dress up often and rarely used skincare products. However, she didn't know why. When she was in school, the other girls in the same dormitory used tons of skincare products. She only used water to wash her face and didn't even use the basic moisturizer. However, her skin was actually better than those girls who used thousands of skincare products. Hence, she didn't believe that skincare products had any effect. Liang Yin sat on the bed and didn't wake Hua Jin up. After such a long day, she was a little tired. She lay quietly on the bed and covered herself with the blanket. She fell asleep just like that. The heater was turned on in the room. Hua Jin and Liang Yin lay on the sofa and the bed respectively and slept soundly. Early in the morning, the doorbell suddenly rang. Liang Yin did not wake up. She covered her head with the quilt, so she was not awakened by the doorbell. Hua Jin, on the other hand, was suddenly alert. He sat up from the sofa and walked to the door. Through the peephole, he saw his assistant standing at the door with a nervous expression. Hua Jin? Hua Jin? Hua Jin was just about to speak when he saw his hand on the doorknob. He realized that he had just woken up and had forgotten that he had already swapped souls with Liang Yin. He frowned and paced back and forth a few times. Then, he returned to the bedside and shook Liang Yin awake. Wake up! Wake up! Liang Yin was still in the midst of her sweet dream when Hua Jin shook her. It was as if the ground and mountains were shaking in her dream. She woke up with a start and opened her eyes, only to see a magnified and horrified face. Liang Yin, wake up! Liang Yin woke up and rubbed her eyes. She sat up alertly and looked around. What's the matter? Before Hua Jin could say anything, she heard a knock on the door. She instantly became alert. What's the matter? Chapter 38:13. He had accepted an endorsement deal. Today's job was to attend an event on behalf of an advertiser. It was an event for a high-end skincare brand. However, seeing how Liang Yin was behaving, Hua Jin was worried that she would mess up the event. What should I do? Don't worry. Go and tell the assistant that you need to take a shower. Ask her to come back in half an hour. I'll tell you how to complete the task in this half an hour. Do I really have to go? Liang Yin seemed to be in a dilemma. I don't know how. Idiot. I'll teach you what to do later. You just have to learn from me. All right then. Will there be a lot of media reporters? I'm not going to be on TV, am I? Liang Yin couldn't be any more nervous at the thought of going on TV. Hua Jin held his forehead as he had a headache. To him, whether it was the media or the camera, he was already used to being on camera. However, Liang Yin was an ordinary person. She might not even be able to handle a small store event, let alone such a big event. Then, if they were not swapped back for the award ceremony at the end of the year, Liang Yin would be so scared that she wouldn't be able to move an inch if she saw such a big event. Go and tell the assistant first. Do as I taught you just now. Liang Yin immediately nodded. Oh, okay. She walked to the door and did as Hua Jin had instructed. She said to the assistant, I'm already up, but I just woke up. I want to take a hot shower. The assistant panicked. Little ancestor, why do you want to take a shower? Just get the stylist to do your makeup. Hua Jin was eavesdropping at the side. When he heard this, he immediately gestured with his hands. Liang Yin couldn't understand what he was trying to say. Hua Jin leaned in close to her ear. His orchid breath brushed against her cheeks, making her feel as if they were on fire. Just say that you fell into the water yesterday. If you don't take a hot shower, you'll catch a cold easily. Oh. Liang Yin was so nervous that her mind went blank. She immediately said, Hua Jin said, he fell into the water yesterday. If he doesn't take a shower, he'll catch a cold easily. When Hua Jin heard this, he felt a headache coming on. Outside the door, the assistant was confused. What was going on? Only then did Liang Yin realize that she was too nervous and accidentally let it slip. For a moment, she was so anxious that her face turned red. She immediately corrected him. Haha. Anyway, come back in half an hour. After that, Hua Jin pulled her back to the room. Listen up. Generally speaking, the event this time is mostly an event and half an interview. If the host asks you some questions, you should answer them seriously if you can. If you can't answer them, you should use a smile instead. Generally speaking, if you smile, the fans below the stage will scream, and this problem will be solved. Liang Yi nodded as if she understood. Then, what if I don't know how to answer all of them and just keep smiling like an idiot? Who told you to smile like an idiot? Hua Jin demonstrated the correct way to smile for her. Liang Yi imitated him and smiled a few times. However, she saw that Hua Jin was stunned. What are you doing? Liang Yi poked his head. Why are you in a daze? Hua Jin reacted and touched her face narcissistically. No wonder my fans used to scream whenever I smiled. I look so good when I smile. Chapter 38:14. When Hua Jin saw this, he was a little surprised. What are you doing? Do you think we'll never be able to change back? That I'll be living as you forever? Isn't that good? Hua Jin smirked. You're the one who lucked out. How am I the one who lucked out? Look, I'm prettier than you, richer than you, and more famous than you. What about you? You have nothing. It's so difficult for you to even meet your idol. If that's not lucking out, then what is? Hua Jin said disapprovingly. Liang Yi was speechless. She asked, what about you? Are you going to meet me in secret? Meet you in secret? Hua Jin narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Liang Yi then realized that she had used the wrong words. She immediately corrected herself. If someone finds out, it'll be considered a scandal, right? Hua Jin touched his chin. He also felt that this matter was a little tricky. He couldn't possibly keep meeting Liang Yi in secret like this. He had to think of a legitimate way to do it. Hua Jin suddenly had an idea. Why don't I apply to be your assistant? Assistant? Aha, a newly hired assistant. She'll take care of your daily life and be in charge of your events. At the same time, she'll train your acting skills and teach you how to act. When Liang Yi heard this, she still hadn't come back to her senses. Acting was indeed a rather difficult task. Not to mention acting, even when facing the camera, she felt nervous and at a loss. The assistant outside the door rushed him again. Hua Jin, you can't take it anymore. It's too late. Are you done showering? Hua Jin gave Liang Yi a look and then hid in the wardrobe. Liang Yi stood up and walked to the wardrobe. After confirming that he had hidden well, she let the assistant in. The stylist was standing behind the assistant. Liang Yi said awkwardly, well, it's too late. It's too late. The assistant hurriedly called the stylist in and pushed Liang Yi to the sofa. She also moved the spotlight and makeup box in and started the huge makeup project. Actually, Hua Jin's foundation was very good, but there was still a difference between before and after makeup. While the stylist was putting on her makeup, Liang Yi anxiously watched her assistant pacing back and forth in the room. She laid out the quilt and rummaged through the cloakroom. She was a little nervous, worried that she would stumble upon Hua Jin's hidden cabinet. If she really found it, then it would be hard to explain. Seeing the assistant fumbling toward the cabinet, where Hua Jin was hiding, Liang Yi suddenly shouted, "Hey!" When the assistant heard her voice, he turned around and pointed at himself. "Master Jin, are you calling me?" Ugh, ugh. Liang Yi nodded. She didn't know the name of the assistant. She waved at her and said, "Come here." The assistant walked over with the clothes in her arms. Liang Yi said, "I want to hire another assistant." When the assistant heard this, her expression immediately became uneasy. "Master Jin, did I do something wrong, so you want to replace me?" "I want to hire another one." Liang Yi muttered, "I only have one assistant. It's not enough." "Master Jin, have you forgotten? You have 3 assistants." Liang Yin's expression turned awkward. She thought to herself, why didn't Hua Jin tell her about this? But 3 assistants? That's too much. Even the emperor didn't have such a grandeur. Chapter 38:15. The assistant was dumbfounded. Oh my god, was this really Hua Jin? This Hua Jin actually wanted to ask for her opinion. The assistant immediately smiled apologetically and said, "Master Jin, you're the employer. You can just tell me directly if you want to hire a new assistant. However, if I did anything wrong, you must tell me. I'm going to correct it soon. Okay. Liang Yi nodded and obediently followed the makeup artist's instructions. She closed her eyes and allowed the makeup artist to do her makeup. She lamented in her heart. Life as a celebrity is so comfortable. She had 3 meals a day, and she had an assistant to attend to her every need. Besides acting, she didn't have to do anything else herself. It felt so good. If only she was also a celebrity. However, wasn't she also a celebrity now? Although this body wasn't hers, she could still satisfy her cravings. Hua Jin hid in the wardrobe. The air was so stuffy that he almost couldn't breathe. After 1.5 hours, he heard the sound of the door closing. Liang Yin had obviously been taken away by the assistant. He then crawled out of the wardrobe and took out his cell phone. This cell phone belonged to Liang Yin. It had run out of battery, so he connected it to the charger first. Coincidentally, Liang Yin had forgotten to bring her cell phone when she left. He picked up his cell phone and dialed Qin Zhou's number. Half an hour later, Qin Zhou appeared. The moment he opened the door, Hua Jin grabbed his hand and dragged him in. He looked outside the door warily and then closed it. After Qin Zhou entered the room, he looked around and saw that there was only Hua Jin in the room. Hence, he turned around and sized up Hua Jin in disbelief. In front of him was a thin girl with a nervous expression. Who are you? Earlier on the phone, Hua Jin was worried that he couldn't explain it clearly over the phone, so he told Qin Zhou that something had happened to Hua Jin. After all, Hua Jin was Qin Zhou's artist. He was worried that something might have happened to Hua Jin, so he hurried over. However, when he saw that Hua Jin had turned into Liang Yin, he was confused. Qin Zhou, it's me. Hua Jin said nervously. I'm Hua Jin. The air was dead silent for a long time. Qin Zhou sneered coldly. Who the hell are you? I'm warning you, no matter who you are, don't try to act mysterious in front of me. I'll ask you one more time. What exactly happened to Hua Jin? Tell me clearly. It's true. Hua Jin grabbed his hand anxiously. I'm really Hua Jin. Now calm down. I'll tell you everything from the beginning to the end. Qin Zhou interrupted her. I'm very calm. You, on the other hand, don't seem to be thinking clearly. Hua Jin sighed helplessly. I know that what happened to me is indeed difficult to understand using normal thinking. If it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it. Qin Zhou narrowed his eyes. Luckily, Qin Zhou had some patience. Perhaps he wanted to see what this girl's motive was, so he really wanted to hear what kind of fallacy she was going to make. Hua Jin then patiently recounted what had happened the day before. Until the end of the story, Qin Zhou's face was expressionless. He even wanted to laugh a little. When Hua Jin saw his expression, she knew that Qin Zhou still didn't believe what she had said. Chapter 38:16. Until he finished speaking, there was no change in Qin Zhou's expression. He even wanted to laugh a little. When Hua Jin saw his expression, he knew that Qin Zhou still did not believe him. He looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. He said weakly, I really, if you don't believe me, you can test me. Anyway, I have plenty of ways to prove that I'm Hua Jin. No matter how sincere he sounded, Qin Zhou obviously did not believe him. After all, it was so ridiculous that even a scientist would not believe it. How could Qin Zhou believe it so easily? He said coldly, I don't care who you are. Today is not April Fool's Day. As he said this, Qin Zhou turned around angrily and was about to leave. Hua Jin panicked and blurted out, I remember that on the day of Xingzhe's accident, you went to the hospital and walked out of the morgue with red eyes. When Qin Zhou heard this, he stopped in his tracks. Hua Jin chased after him and said, I was outside the emergency room that day, waiting for Shirshir. On the day of Xingzhe's accident, he was stabbed several times while protecting Shirshir. As for Shirshir, because of the serious damage to her cornea, she lost her sight for a long time. Because of Xingzhe's incident, she was unable to recover for a long time. Qin Zhou looked at Hua Jin in surprise. Hua Jin smiled and said, After Shirshir got married, you went missing for a long time. This is not something that ordinary people know about. Qin Zhou, You know about this too, right? Qin Zhou's face was filled with confusion. What Hua Jin said shocked him to the core. This was because what he said was true. These things were rarely known, especially the specific cause of Xingzhe's death. It had always been a secret and not many people knew about it. When Yun Shishir was unable to recover from the setback, not many people knew about it. As for Yu Yu's matter, even fewer people knew about it. Unless, of course, Hua Jin had told everyone about this. However, the key was that with Hua Jin's character, he would never reveal these secrets. When Hua Jin saw that Qin Zhou's expression had softened, he was so nervous that he started to ramble incoherently. I know that it's hard for you to believe what I've said. If it were me, I wouldn't believe it either. But, Qin Zhou, it really happened. You also know that you can't tell anyone about this. Even if you tell anyone, they won't believe such a ridiculous thing. Only you. If you don't believe me, I'm really desperate. For the time being, he did not know how to confess to Shishir. She told Qin Zhou because she knew that Qin Zhou was a reliable person. Although he wasn't serious normally, he was very reliable at critical moments. Secondly, Qin Zhou was her manager. If he knew about this, he could stay by Liang Yin's side openly. Qin Zhou pondered for a moment and suddenly said meaningfully, "Unless you answer me one thing." "Yes." "The real Hua Jin can't do that." Qin Zhou's deep gaze fell on him. Hua Jin immediately exclaimed, "What's wrong with me? You?" This Qin Zhou was simply, "Ha ha ha." Qin Zhou couldn't help but laugh. He winked mischievously and said, "I'm trying to get something out of you." Hua Jin. This guy was actually trying to get something out of him. He gritted his teeth in anger. Qin Zhou. All right. I won't make fun of you anymore. Chapter 38:17. Hua Jin sat back on the bed gloomily. He said dejectedly, "Why do I have to encounter such a situation? Will I never be able to change back?" Qin Zhou glanced at him and said faintly, "Isn't it good to be a woman? I think you're not bad now. It's so easy to be a woman. It's just that you've changed from a top to a bottom in a certain aspect." Hua Jin's face turned green when he heard that. "You're still joking with me at a time like this?" "I'm serious." Qin Zhou looked serious. "What's wrong with being a woman?" Hua Jin held his forehead in despair. Qin Zhou continued to fan the flames. "I can introduce you to a boyfriend." "Get lost." "I'm serious. Think about it." "Qin Zhou," Hua Jin said angrily, "I'm really frustrated now. If you continue to joke, I'll really get angry." Qin Zhou's eyes widened in shock. "Yo, your temper is quite bad after becoming a woman. Yeah, you've adapted well to the role." Qin Zhou took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. Hua Jin wanted one too, but Qin Zhou said coldly, "Girls shouldn't smoke." Hua Jin was speechless. Qin Zhou lit a cigarette and took a few puffs silently. He finally calmed down and started to adapt to Hua Jin's role. He asked, "How does it feel to become a woman?" "Not good. I feel like I'm missing something." "Why don't you say that you're missing something?" Hua Jin glared at him hatefully. Qin Zhou whistled and pretended not to see the resentment in his eyes. "You said that you've exchanged souls with a woman. Does this body belong to that girl now?" "Yeah." "Let me see." Qin Zhou pinched his chin and looked at him seriously. Then, he gave a pertinent comment. "He's so long that he can't stop. She doesn't look as beautiful as me. It's just that she doesn't need makeup. With makeup, she's still a beauty." Qin Zhou had a sharp eye for people. Hua Jin sullenly turned his face away, feeling awkward. "Then, what about the girl?" Hua Jin suddenly thought of something and stood up nervously. "Send me to the event venue now." "Huh?" "I'm afraid she doesn't know how to deal with that kind of situation." Qin Zhou frowned and nodded. Hua Jin followed Qin Zhou into the car and drove all the way to the event venue. The venue was already crowded with people. Hua Jin's current fame was like the sun in the sky. His position in the entertainment industry was hard to defend. As the most popular young actor, he had the most traffic. Hua Jin's commercial value was very high. The so-called commercial value was the cohesion of the fans. The cosmetics that he endorsed during his endorsement period increased from 1.5% of the market share to a terrifying 18%. What a terrifying fan effect. No matter what product Hua Jin endorsed, it would almost guarantee the reputation and sales. Therefore, many of Hua Jin's loyal fans had already gathered at the event venue. Thanks to this, it was Hua Jin's first time attending his own event as a member of the public. On stage, the MC was still hyping up the crowd. Liang Yin had yet to appear, but there were already quite a number of fans below the stage screaming Hua Jin's name hysterically. The entire venue was in full swing, and the atmosphere was terrifying. Chapter 38:18. Qin Zhou smiled. Why? Are you shocked by your own fans? Hua Jin nodded and gulped. I didn't feel it when I was on stage, but now I feel that. These fans are crazy. Before he could finish his sentence, the fans behind him kept squeezing forward. Accompanied by the earth-shattering cheers, Hua Jin saw Liang Yin come on stage. Liang Yin held the microphone nervously. When she came on stage, she felt countless strong spotlights fall on her. It was dazzling. Her vision blurred and she couldn't see clearly for a while. The MC gave a brief opening speech and looked at her. Before Liang Yin went on stage, the host had already discussed the script with her. But, even though they had discussed the script, it was her first time appearing under the spotlight as a celebrity, so she wasn't used to it. As a result, she stood rooted to the ground in shock. Hua Jin saw her standing there in a daze and held his forehead. Why was she so scared that she didn't say a word? Could it be that she had stage fright? Qin Zhou narrowed his eyes and looked at her. On stage, the MC saw Liang Yin holding the microphone nervously with a dazed expression and was a little puzzled by her unexpected performance. Hua Jin, say hello to the fans below the stage. Liang Yin came back to her senses and raised her hand stiffly. She smiled at the audience. Hello everyone, I'm Hua Jin. As soon as she said that, the fans below the stage screamed crazily. Hua Jin. Hua Jin, I love you. Hubby. Someone shouted loudly, causing the audience below the stage to burst into laughter and call him husband. The scene was too big. As a result, in the decently sized hall, Liang Yin could only feel a buzzing in her head. So this was the experience of being a celebrity. It didn't feel good. She was a fan of Tang Yu and had seen many fans chasing after celebrities. At that time, she felt that the more enthusiastic the fans were, the more excited the celebrity idol on stage would be. She shouted so loudly because she wanted her idol to hear her. Unfortunately, now that Liang Yin had switched over to Hua Jin's perspective, she realized that no matter how passionate the fans were, in her eyes, there was only a sea of black. She even felt like the fans below the stage all had the same face and she couldn't tell who was who. If he was too enthusiastic, it would instead. She was at a loss as to what to do. Hua Jin, I love you. Hubby. Hubby. She did not know how to respond. Although she was now occupying Hua Jin's body, she was not Hua Jin. These were not her fans. She did not even know how to reciprocate their enthusiasm. He was completely out of his wits. Usually, when celebrities were doing activities, they had to constantly interact with the fans below the stage. However, Liang Yin's ability to improvise was more than just passable. It was simply too horrible to look at. She just stood there awkwardly, as if she was petrified. Hua Jin covered his face. He knew that an ordinary person like Liang Yin would not be able to handle such an occasion. Qin Zhou was speechless. She seems to be frightened by your fans. Is it that exaggerated? Hua Jin said impatiently. Isn't it just greeting and interacting with the fans? It's not difficult, right? I haven't asked her to act yet. It's not the same. Qin Zhou said. She might not have gotten into your role yet. Chapter 38:19. On one hand, he was feeling a little unwell. His stomach was strangely swollen and painful. On the other hand, the fans were so noisy that his eardrums hurt. If it wasn't for Liang Yin, he wouldn't want to stand in front of so many people. On the stage, although Liang Yin was just standing there in a daze, the MC's ability to save the situation was quite outstanding. He said to the fans, actually, I saw that Hua Jin was feeling a little unwell backstage. He turned to Liang Yin and asked, I heard that you were busy filming a new show and often stayed up late? Liang Yin didn't know how to answer. She didn't know how to smooth things over. But when she recalled Hua Jin's words, if she didn't know how to answer, just smile, smile. Hence, a weak smile appeared on her face. The MC nodded and continued, I've worked with Hua Jin a few times. Once on the stage of an award ceremony and once on a variety show. He is a very dedicated idol. Backstage, I saw that his face was pale and he wasn't feeling well. After asking, I found out that because he was busy filming a new show, he came to our event this time with a sick body. So, it's really a rare occasion. Liang Yin was still smiling, but in her heart, she thought, what a serious nonsense. She wasn't sick. However, the MC was really good at making things up to smooth things over. Could it be that those who claimed to be sick on the previous shows were just excuses and excuses? However, her smile was too weak. When the fans below the stage saw it, their hearts ached and their voices gradually weakened. Hua Jin, all the best. Hua Jin, hang in there. We'll always support you. We'll always be by your side. The MC moved away and said to Liang Yin in a low voice, sit down. Liang Yin hurriedly nodded and sat down on the chair. Immediately after, the MC started a long speech. Then, he invited the brand's official spokesperson to give an impassioned speech. Liang Yin was in a daze the entire time. Hua Jin couldn't stand it anymore and said, I hate her for not living up to expectations. The MC tried to offer her a few times, but she didn't accept it. Qin Zhou said, she doesn't know these things. I feel that her ability to react on the spot is too bad, let alone interact. But you can't blame her. She's not a celebrity. When Hua Jin heard that, he didn't say anything. Indeed, Liang Yin was just an ordinary person. It was too far-fetched to ask her to act and do activities like a celebrity. However, it wasn't right to just sit there and do nothing. Fortunately, there was an interaction segment between the idols and their fans. One of the segments was to let the idol and the fan kiss through a love glass. Although he had seen this kind of trick many times, it was always used on his fans. However, not every fan was lucky enough to get on stage. Only the fans who received the VIP card had the right to enjoy this luck. The host randomly picked a few fans from the VIP area to come on stage and interact with Liang Yin. Liang Yin, on the other hand, was very open about this game. After all, the people on stage were all female fans, so she didn't have to be so reserved. She smiled and interacted with the host and the fans. It was the fans' turn to be excited and nervous. Although they were kissing through a glass, at least they could be in close contact with their idols. They could even hug them. This was something that many fans didn't even dare to dream of. Oh, it's my turn, it's my turn. Chapter 38:20. Someone fainted. Someone fainted. Call an ambulance. Call an ambulance. It turned out that a fan sitting in the VIP area had fainted out of excitement when she saw that she had been chosen. The crowd immediately became restless. On the stage, the MC was dumbfounded when she saw that a fan had fainted. Hua Jin and Qin Zhou, who were below the stage, were also dumbfounded. In fact, it was not rare for fans to faint out of excitement. However, most celebrities would stand on the stage and it would be dark below the stage. Under normal circumstances, it would not be seen. However, Hua Jin and Qin Zhou, who were below the stage, could see it clearly. Is that exaggerated? Qin Zhou was speechless. Did you just realize that your popularity is that exaggerated? Hua Jin touched his nose. To be honest, he was a little shocked. Liang Yin obviously saw it too. Because it was an exhibition stand and not a very big stage, she could see everything that happened below the stage clearly. Liang Yin was a little frightened. She stood up helplessly and said to the fans below the stage, everyone, calm down. Don't panic. The fans below the stage were also shocked by this sudden situation and were in a mess. Some were busy taking care of the person who had fainted, while others were very impatient. They felt that the girl who had fainted had ruined Hua Jin's event. They cursed, why are you so agitated? Don't harm people if you haven't seen the world. That's right. She ruined Hua Jin's event. She's too evil. Immediately, someone stood up. You're too cold-blooded. She's already fainted. Why are you still squeezing around? It's fine if you're squeezing around, but what's the point of making sarcastic remarks? Brainless fans. Many fans were angry when they were called brainless fans. You speak as if you're so noble. Aren't you Hua Jin's fan too? Since you're Hua Jin's fan, why are you calling her a brainless fan? That's right. If you're so noble, you should be responsible for carrying her out. Call an ambulance for her. Who knows? She might blackmail you for doing a good deed. Haha. That's right, we're Hua Jin's brainless fans. We're better than a white lotus like you. Hua Jin felt a headache coming on. He quickly said, "Stop arguing. Everyone, be quiet." He had obviously forgotten that he was now Liang Yin. When the others heard him speak, they scolded him angrily. "Shut up!" Hua Jin's eyes widened in shock. Qin Zhou couldn't stand it any longer. He pulled him aside and said, "Are you crazy? Have you forgotten that you're not Hua Jin now? Oh right, what's your name?" Hua Jin was silent for a moment before he said coldly, "My name is Liang Yin." Liang Yin. Qin Zhou looked around and said, "It's too chaotic here. Let's leave this place first." Okay. On the stage, the staff went up and gave some instructions to the MC and Liang Yin. The two of them hurriedly followed the staff down the stage. Immediately after, the MC announced through the microphone backstage, "Due to an unexpected situation, the event has been cancelled." When the fans below the stage heard this, they were filled with complaints. They cursed the useless fan who had fainted several times. Jinx! Jinx! What bad luck! If it wasn't for her. Chapter 38:21. All right, Hua Jin nodded. He got into the car and returned to the hotel with Qin Zhou. Not long after, Liang Yin returned. The assistant walked her into the room and saw Qin Zhou and Hua Jin sitting on the sofa. However, the assistant found the woman in front of her familiar. Aren't you the one from yesterday? Hua Jin turned his face away awkwardly. Qin Zhou immediately gave the assistant a look and said, "Go out for a while." The assistant heard this and asked uneasily, "Boss, what's wrong?" Qin Zhou was the assistant's boss. She thought that there was some kind of dispute and that Hua Jin was being blackmailed. However, Qin Zhou said, "You can go out for a while." Oh. The assistant nodded and walked out silently. Liang Yin locked the door. She didn't know that Hua Jin and Qin Zhou had gone to the event. She even felt a little guilty for messing up Hua Jin's event. Who is he? Liang Yin naturally didn't know Qin Zhou. Hence, she stared at him blankly, not knowing what to do. Hua Jin immediately stood up and said, "This is my boss, Qin Zhou. You can just call him Qin Zhou from now on." Qin Zhou. This name was too familiar. Liang Yin couldn't help but react. Wasn't Qin Zhou Gu Xing's manager in the past? However, after Gu Xingze passed away, Qin Zhou didn't manage any new artists. But she didn't expect that Hua Jin was actually an artist under Qin Zhou. The three of them sat down and looked at each other. Qin Zhou was the first to break the silence. "Hua Jin, since you called me over, it means that you have something to ask of me." Hua Jin felt a dull pain in the rafters. He stood up and said, "I don't know what to do, but my mind is in a mess right now. But Liang Yin can't leave me. She doesn't know how to act. She doesn't even know how to read the script. So, I have to stay by her side." Originally, Liang Yin didn't think too much about it. After such a thing happened, both of their minds were in a mess. However, once they thought about how they would continue to maintain this status quo, they really didn't know what to do. If she continued to be Hua Jin, how would she film? She couldn't even understand the script. Liang Yin was in despair. She did not want to be a man for the rest of her life. She wanted her body back. Hua Jin suddenly thought of something. He stood up and said, "I remember that the soul exchange happens when you fall into the water. Could it be?" He turned around and said meaningfully, "Why don't we do it again?" Liang Yin took a step back in fear. I don't know how to swim. I'll drown." If he were to fall into the water again for the sake of the experiment and drown, wouldn't the losses outweigh the gains? However, Hua Jin didn't care whether she agreed or not. He grabbed her hand and walked out of the door. The hotel in the film studio complex was huge. There was a huge swimming pool at the back. It wasn't until Hua Jin dragged her all the way to the swimming pool that Liang Yin realized that they weren't going to the lake, but to the swimming pool. However, it's so cold. Liang Yin hugged her body and shivered from the cold. She turned around and was about to ask Hua Jin what he planned to do when, unexpectedly, he was in such a hurry to switch back to his body that he gave her a light kick from behind, sending her straight into the pool. Ah! Gurgle gurgle. Liang Yin fell into the water. Caught off guard, she drank a few mouthfuls of water. Chapter 38:22. Hua Jin also jumped into the swimming pool. The swimming pool was divided into deep and shallow sections. The deep section reached 1.8 meters. Liang Yin fell into the water and struggled violently. There was no way for her to step on the ground. If she stepped on the ground, she would be drowned in the pool. Help! Gurgle gurgle. Help! Gurgle gurgle. After Hua Jin got into the water, he swam towards her and grabbed her arm, pulling her into his embrace. Without hesitation, he kissed her lips and passed the air in his mouth to her. Even though she got a thin amount of oxygen from Hua Jin, she didn't know how to swim at all. In addition, she had gulped down a few mouthfuls of water and her brain was on the verge of hypoxia. After that, she lost consciousness. Suffocation. The feeling of suffocation filled her entire brain and it kept sending out signals of danger. When she woke up again and opened her eyes, she was greeted by fresh air. Liang Yin immediately took in big mouthfuls of air greedily. When she had almost recovered, she then realized that she had returned to the shore. She sat up abruptly and saw Hua Jin sitting by the side of the pool with a hopeless expression. Have you given up? Qin Zhou's cold voice came from beside him. Hua Jin turned around and glared at him with an ashen face. Liang Yin wanted to say something, but her gaze fell on Hua Jin's face. She didn't know why, but her gaze was fixed on his lips. When she thought of how he took the initiative to pass the air to her in the swimming pool, she didn't know why her face started to burn. Even though she was taken out of the swimming pool earlier, her body was extremely cold. Go back to your room first, Qin Zhou said again. Since you're here, let's take things as they come. Since you've changed your body, let's just leave it as it is for now. You can stay by her side as her assistant. As for the future, let's talk about it later. Hua Jin felt wronged, but he had no choice. He could only stand up and walk back to his room with a gloomy expression. Liang Yin saw that he didn't look too good, and she didn't know why she blamed herself for it. It seemed like, if it wasn't for her carelessness, Hua Jin would have ended up like this in order to save her. Liang Yin stood up guiltily and nodded at Qin Zhou before following Hua Jin to the room. The two of them entered the room. Hua Jin stood at the bathroom door and took off his clothes. When he saw Liang Yin enter the room, he stood there awkwardly and said to her, "Don't you want to shower together? Let's shower together?" Liang Yin took a step back. "Please don't." Men and women couldn't accept it clearly. When Hua Jin heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Now your body is mine and my body is yours. What's there to be confused about? After a pause, he continued, "Let's shower together. There's only one bathroom. I'll take a long shower. What if you catch a cold if I wait too long?" "I'm fine. You think I care about you?" Hua Jin snorted coldly. "I care about my body. Now that your body is mine, you're not responsible for yourself, you're responsible for me, understand? And I have to be responsible for your body too." These words sounded very awkward. Liang Yin felt a little uncomfortable. However, she saw that after Hua Jin had finished speaking, he took off all his clothes. Chapter 38:23. It wasn't until Hua Jin entered the bathroom that Liang Yin hid in a corner and secretly took off her clothes. She hugged her body and walked into the bathroom, trembling. Hua Jin was already sitting in the bathtub. The warm water was slowly being poured into the bathtub. In the blink of an eye, the bathroom was filled with mist. The bathtub was very big. It was 2 meters wide and could accommodate 2 people. Liang Yin stood by the side of the bathroom, still hesitating. Even though she was in Hua Jin's body now, it still felt a little awkward. Hua Jin said plainly, "Come in." Liang Yin lifted her leg and stepped into the bathtub. The warm water submerged her ankles and the pores all over her body opened up. Her desire for warmth was such that she couldn't care less. Moreover, there was a lot of mist and the bathtub was very big. She could stay a little further away from him. Separated by the mist, they couldn't see each other. Hence, Liang Yin sat in the bathtub. Separated by the mist, they couldn't see each other. Liang Yin hugged her knees and tried her best to curl her body into a ball. Hua Jin suddenly asked, "Are you still studying?" "I'm not studying anymore. I'm in my 4th year of university and I'm doing my internship." "Oh," Hua Jin asked again, "what about your family?" "I'm alone." "Alone?" Hua Jin raised his eyebrows. "How is that possible? You haven't graduated yet. Don't tell me you're alone and can take care of yourself." Liang Yin exhaled and said, "My biological father is overseas. My mom divorced him and remarried to another man. She's living with that man. She left me a house and gives me living expenses every month." "Got it," Hua Jin explained. "In the future, if your mom comes looking for you, I'll at least know what's going on. Otherwise, it won't be good if I can't react in time and things get out of hand." Liang Yin nodded. She asked worriedly, "Do I have to act for you in the future? You've read the original novel Heavy Snow, right?" "Yes." "Very good. There aren't many changes to the script. You just have to memorize the lines." Hua Jin spoke casually, but Liang Yin felt a headache coming on. "You're saying that you're filming the day after tomorrow?" "Yes." "Then, I still don't remember my lines. After I take a shower, I'll burn the midnight oil and practice with you." When Liang Yin heard this, she still felt uncertain. The bathroom was connected to the bathtub. Hua Jin soaked for a while, then stood up and washed under the shower. Liang Yin kept a close eye on him, making sure that he didn't violate any parts of her body that shouldn't be touched. When Hua Jin finished washing up and saw him off, she stood up, stepped out of the bathtub, and rinsed herself under the shower. After walking out of the bathroom, she saw Hua Jin busy in the living room. First, he placed 2 floor lamps in front of the sofa. Then, he moved a small stool to the back left. "Do you see these 2 lamps?" "Yes." "You can think of them as 2 cameras, one camera A and one camera B." Cameras? Liang Yin didn't understand these professional names at all. It's a camera. One is a long shot and the other is a close-up. Sometimes there may be other cameras in other scenes, but the main 2 cameras are facing you. Hua Jin pointed at the small stool and said, "That's where the director sits." Chapter 38:24. When Hua Jin heard this, he felt a little hopeful. "Then you should have some foundation in lines, right?" Liang Yin furrowed her eyebrows, feeling a little conflicted. "I definitely can't compare to a professional. Actually, I didn't go to any film school and I'm not a professional. I learned my acting by myself." Hua Jin sat down on the sofa and said to her, "You acted in a play during your university days. You also acted as a female character, right?" Liang Yin smirked and said, "A male character? What?" Hua Jin was a little curious. "What play did you act in?" "It was an original script. However, there weren't many male students, so I could only act as a young man." Hua Jin nodded and glanced at the script on the wall. Seeing that there wasn't much time left, he said, "We have to memorize our lines in the next 2 days. Even if we don't act well, we can't let the director feel that we didn't memorize the script seriously." Liang Yin replied with an okay. She was also sincerely willing to cooperate with Hua Jin. After all, if it weren't for her, this situation wouldn't have happened. Hua Jin took out the script from the drawer and handed it to Liang Yin. He sat beside her and watched her memorize the script. He could recite the script backwards with his eyes closed. From the night he received the script, he had read it once. Within a few days, he had memorized all the lines clearly. Moreover, he memorized them as he memorized them. Hua Jin's memory was abnormal. It was said that many famous directors had read countless people, but Hua Jin was the only one who had the ability to memorize a script after reading it once. Hua Jin liked this script very much. Hence, when he read the script, he read it with relish. Liang Yin, on the other hand, didn't have a terrifying memory like Hua Jin. However, she was more hardworking and hardworking. When she was in school, her grades were among the best. That was because no matter what she did, she was very serious and focused. Hua Jin gave Liang Yin the whole night to memorize the script, and he lay on the sofa to accompany her. He originally thought that Liang Yin would find the script boring and wouldn't cooperate, but unexpectedly, Liang Yin was very focused. She memorized the script and highlighted the key points. She tried to figure out the character's mood and state and rehearsed it in her heart. Hua Jin saw that she was so serious, so he was relieved. Unknowingly, he fell asleep. When he woke up again, the sky was already bright. It was Liang Yin who shook him awake. "Wake up." Hua Jin opened his misty eyes. He was so sleepy that he saw Liang Yin squatting beside the sofa. However, his eyelids were slightly dizzy. He knew that she hadn't slept all night. What happened? Hua Jin sat up from the sofa and yawned. "You didn't sleep? Didn't you ask me to read the script?" Liang Yin smiled proudly. "I've already memorized all the lines." "Oh." Hua Jin didn't react at first. It was only when he realized later that his eyes suddenly widened. "What? I've already memorized all the lines." "Impossible." Hua Jin woke up immediately. He flipped through the script and muttered, "There are so many lines. How could she memorize them all in one night?" Even with his incredible memory, it took him an entire night to memorize all the lines. This Liang Yin had memorized all the lines in just one night? Chapter 38:25. Hua Jin said, "Okay, but let's just pretend that we're filming. Let's simulate the scene of filming. You can put in your emotions just like how you're acting with me. Let's do this part first." Hua Jin noted that this was the part of filming the day after tomorrow. This was the main point. Liang Yin glanced at it and knew which part it was. She stood up and walked calmly to the center. It was obvious that she was very confident. First, she closed her eyes and brewed her emotions. Hua Jin also stood up. As her co-star, he was playing the role of the female lead, Wuxia. Standing opposite her, Hua Jin patiently waited for her to get into character. A few minutes later, Liang Yin opened her eyes and nodded. "Let's begin." Hua Jin also quickly got into character. Although he was not an experienced actor, Hua Jin's acting skills were definitely among the best among the younger actors. The story of Demon Eyes was about the love and hatred between the Demon Slayer and the Fox Emperor. The female lead, Wuxia, was a disciple that no one acknowledged in the Yin-Yang Palace. As a Yin-Yang master, her primary responsibility was to slay demons. However, as a demon slayer, Wuxia could not even learn the basic demon-slaying techniques. Until an accident, she found out that she was not actually a human, but a human and a demon that violated the taboo and gave birth. This secret was found out by the Yin-Yang Palace, and the elders ordered Wuxia to be expelled from the sect. The exiled Wuxia was abandoned by everyone. She swore that she would prove that she was a true demon slayer. However, later on, she met the Fox Emperor, Fengji. At that time, Fengji only had a cultivation of 1,000 years and could not command 100 ghosts. He was subdued by Wuxia. As Wuxia's Shikigami, he developed feelings for her after many setbacks and difficulties. Thus, he confessed to her. This was the most important scene of their rivalry. Liang Yin entered the role of Fengji. When she looked at Hua Jin's face again, her eyes were full of affection. However, this affection, because of Fengji's frivolous personality, seemed a little arrogant. "Come back to 100 Ghost Village with me. How about I make you my wife?" With just one sentence, the tension, worry, and fear of Wuxia's rejection, as well as the restrained admiration on her face, were vividly displayed. He put down his pride and talked to her. He was afraid of being rejected, and he loved Qingsong, but he was still unwilling to give up his pride as the future Fox Emperor. Even Hua Jin was stunned for a long time. He was even prepared to stop, but he didn't expect Liang Yin to be in such a good state. It was too unbelievable. Has this guy never acted before? Acting depended on one's talent, one's aura, and 3, one's looks. If one didn't have talent and spirit chi, no matter how many great teachers they had, it would be useless. Gu Xingzi's acting skills were very good, and so was Yun Shishir's. Both of them were typical non-acting students, but Gu Xingzi was very talented, and he could portray any character he wanted. Yun Shishir was full of spirit. Her role as Yin Xiaochuan was definitely the most classic screen image. He didn't expect that Liang Yin's conditions were also so good. She was really born to be an actress. Seeing Hua Jin in a daze, Liang Yin asked nervously, "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" No. Hua Jin quickly said, "You acted very well." Then, "It's not your problem, I was distracted." Chapter 38:26. The two of them rehearsed the scene at the airport. Liang Yin was in the zone, so much so that Hua Jin didn't skip the scene. He followed her mood and completely immersed himself in the role. What made him a little shocked was that in the last scene, when Liang Yin was about to part ways with Muqinga, she turned slightly to the side. There were tears hidden in the corners of her eyes, but because of her stubbornness, not a single drop fell. It was too shocking. Hua Jin excitedly called for a stop. He walked in front of Liang Yin and asked in surprise, "You are really not an acting student?" Liang Yin was a little curious. "What's an acting student?" "It's," Hua Jin said. "Many actors come from the Central Opera and the Northern Film Academy. These actors who graduated from the Film Academy are called acting students. They have all undergone professional training." Liang Yin smiled. "I studied English translation in university. Other than drama, I haven't acted in any other movies." Hua Jin was a little depressed. How could her acting be so good? This was the standard. Comparisons were odious. Liang Yin's talent was not inferior to Gu Xingzi's at all. "It's a pity that you're not an actress." When Liang Yin heard this, she couldn't tell for a moment whether Hua Jin's words were complimentary or derogatory. She was a little confused. "Are you complimenting me?" "Of course." Hua Jin snorted. "If I'm not complimenting you, then what am I?" Liang Yin blushed and said, "Thank you." Hua Jin said, "It's morning. You stayed up all night memorizing the script. You must be hungry, right?" "Yeah." Liang Yin nodded. "I'm hungry." "Then, let's go out for breakfast." "Eh? Can I go out as I please?" Hua Jin explained, "This is the film studio. There are no random people who can sneak in, only reporters and fans. Next to the film studio is the food street. There's all kinds of food. It's only a few hundred meters from the hotel, so it's quite convenient. Sometimes, many celebrities would stay in the film city for a few months for filming. Food, clothing, housing, and transportation were all in the film city. Many of the quaint buildings in the film and television city were built later. Because of the filming, the area gradually became prosperous. A few years ago, there might only be half of the fast food here, but as the film and television industry became more and more developed, there would be dozens of film and television crews shooting movies here every year. Actors, staff, reporters, fans with such a large group, many businesses were born. Hotels, inns, goose houses, food streets. Could be said that everything was available. Hua Jin asked Liang Yin what she wanted to eat. Only then did Liang Yin realize that this Hua Jin seemed to be quite a gentleman. As soon as they walked out of the room, Tang Yu's voice came from behind. "Senior Hua Jin." Hua Jin subconsciously turned his head, and only then did he realize that he was now Liang Yin. Tang Yu wasn't calling him TSK. This Tang Yu was really annoying. Perhaps it was because of him. He suddenly remembered that day on the boat. Liang Yin was aggressive, saying that Tang Yu was the real male lead of the drama. He felt disgusted when he saw Tang Yu. This Tang Yu was so young, and his hair was greasy. What was so good about him? Hua Jin glanced at Liang Yin, only to see her turn around. When she saw it was Tang Yu, her face suddenly turned red. Hua Jin was so angry that he stepped on her foot. It wasn't heavy, but it was enough to attract her attention. Chapter 38:27. Hua Jin was even more annoyed. Why are you blushing? Liang Yin didn't know how hot her face was. However, she couldn't force herself to calm down in front of her idol. Before she could say anything, Tang Yu had already walked up to her and said with a smile, "Senior Hua Jin, you're up so early? You don't have to call me senior." Liang Yin seemed a little bashful. She blushed and said, "Just call me Hua Jin." Tang Yu was stunned and a little flattered. He didn't know why, but since the night before, Hua Jin's attitude towards him seemed to have changed from arrogance to inexplicably intimate. It seemed the change was too sudden. The real Hua Jin, on the other hand, was furious. Who allowed her to act on her own accord? Why did Tang Yu have to call him by his name? He was his senior. According to seniority, Tang Yu should have called Hua Jin senior. However, Liang Yin acted on her own accord. Tang Yu didn't notice that someone standing beside him was gnashing her teeth. He scratched his head a little embarrassedly. "Hua Jin, is it really okay for me to call you that?" "No, of course." Liang Yin agreed happily. Tang Yu was quite encouraged. He took a step closer and pretended to ask naturally, "You're up so early. Are you going to eat breakfast?" Liang Yin nodded and said, "Yeah. Do you want to eat breakfast too?" "Yeah, I do." Tang Yu said, "I didn't act well yesterday. I stayed up all night memorizing the script, so I haven't slept yet. I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat breakfast." What a coincidence. Liang Yin was so excited that she blushed and said, "I also stayed up all night reading the script and haven't slept yet. I'm going to eat breakfast." "Okay, let's go together." Tang Yu smiled and said, "It's my treat." "Okay, thank you." Liang Yin behaved appropriately. She also knew that she was Hua Jin now. She could not be as agitated as before, so she restrained herself a lot. However, Hua Jin could no longer remain calm. He tugged at Liang Yin's sleeve and asked incredulously, "Are you going to have breakfast with him?" Liang Yin was stunned, and so was Tang Yu. The two of them asked in unison, "What's wrong? Can't I?" Their rapport was amazing. Hua Jin was cursing in his heart, but on the surface, he was gritting his teeth. Sure, why not? Let's go together." Tang Yu felt a bit strange. Who was this girl? Why did Hua Jin seem to listen to her? "Is this your assistant?" Tang Yu asked. Liang Yin nodded, but Hua Jin snorted coldly and arrogantly turned his face to the side, not looking at him. When Tang Yu saw this, he was a little displeased. He said to Liang Yin, "Hua Jin, I think your assistant's attitude is not good at all. Where did you find her? An assistant is an assistant. Her duty is to take care of her artist. She's the first assistant I've ever seen throwing a tantrum at her employer." When Hua Jin heard this, he was so angry that smoke was about to come out of his head. The muscles on his face stiffened, and he secretly cursed Tang Yu in his heart. "Who do you think you are? How dare you judge me?" Liang Yin quickly tried to smooth things over and said, "She's my distant cousin. She read the script with me all night. She's so sleepy, so she must be in a bad mood." "Is she your cousin?" "Yes, she is." "Oh, I see." Chapter 38:28. Hua Jin's face was even more embarrassed. His handsome face was filled with murderous intent. Especially that pair of eyes. He couldn't wait to stare several holes in Tang Yu. When Tang Yu saw this, he muttered in his heart. Did this guy have some kind of deep grudge against him? Why was he staring at him with such eyes? However, they had never met before. Why was he looking at him as if he couldn't wait to stare him to death? When Liang Yin saw this, she immediately pulled Hua Jin behind her. She smiled at Tang Yu and quickly turned around to wink at Hua Jin. "What are you doing? Did I allow you to do that?" "Huh? He keeps calling me senior. Why did you let him call me Hua Jin? I don't want him to call me by my name." When Liang Yin heard this, she couldn't help but feel a little disgusted. "Why are you so arrogant?" Hua Jin coldly snorted. "I'm a first-tier celebrity. Is it wrong for him to call me senior?" "Actually, I don't think there's a need to put on such airs," Liang Yin said. "I think no matter who's more famous, we're all equal." "That's not up to you," Hua Jin said again. "Don't do it again. Also, you have to figure out your identity. You're Hua Jin now, not Liang Yin. Please don't blush so easily. People will think you're a pervert." When Liang Yin heard this, she was a little unhappy, but she stubbornly said, "When did I blush?" "Just now." Hua Jin's words were like pearls. "When you see Tang Yu, you forget your identity. You're representing me now. Don't embarrass me." When Liang Yin heard this, she was very angry, but because Tang Yu was also here, she could only suppress it. On the surface, she smiled, but she gritted her teeth and said word by word, "I know. Today I found out that you're so long-winded." Tang Yu walked over. Liang Yin and Hua Jin immediately separated, pretending to be calm. He smiled. "What were you talking about just now?" Before Hua Jin could say anything, Liang Yin immediately explained, "We were just discussing what to eat for breakfast." When Tang Yu heard this, he laughed. "Is there a need to discuss this? Just order whatever you want to eat." "That's right. I also said she was too conflicted." Liang Yin cleared her throat and glanced at Hua Jin. Then she smiled and said to Tang Yu, "Let's go. Let's go eat breakfast together." Tang Yu nodded, and the two of them walked side by side toward the breakfast restaurant. Hua Jin walked behind the two men with his arms crossed. He narrowed his eyes as he sized them up with disdain. He didn't know what. This pretty boy doesn't have any masculinity at all. When he said this, it was obvious that he had forgotten that when he had just made his debut, he had also been evaluated by some seniors. A young man in the skin of a beauty. Back then, Hua Jin's beauty was the best in the entertainment industry. In terms of beauty, Tang Yu couldn't be compared to him. In terms of who was more beautiful, Hua Jin had no right to judge others. However, Hua Jin had an advantage over Tang Yu. He was 1.8 meters tall. Even if he was acting in a modern drama, he was still handsome with short hair. Liang Yin and Tang Yu walked in front. Hua Jin followed behind, secretly observing. Chapter 38-29. In terms of beauty, Tang Yu couldn't be compared to him. In terms of who was more beautiful, Hua Jin wasn't qualified to judge others. However, Hua Jin had an advantage over Tang Yu. His height was 1.8 meters. Even if he was acting in a modern drama, he was still handsome with short hair. Liang Yin and Tang Yu walked in front, while Hua Jin followed behind, secretly observing. Tang Yu and Liang Yin chatted on and off. These two people were naturally good at chatting and bringing up their own topics. Especially Tang Yu, it could be seen that he really wanted to curry favor with them. After all, with Hua Jin's background and qualifications, as well as his influential position, if they could build a relationship with Hua Jin, they might be able to get some resources. It was obvious that Tang Yu was trying to flatter him. As for Liang Yin, she obviously couldn't see the key to Tang Yu's enthusiasm. She was happy to be able to chat with Tang Yu. If she had a tail, it would be wagging vigorously. Hua Jin couldn't stand it several times, but he held back. When it was time for the tour, Tang Yu was very attentive to pick out food for Liang Yin. Liang Yin said she liked to eat preserved egg and lean meat porridge, so Tang Yu ordered a bowl of porridge for her, plus some side dishes. Hua Jin talked about small wontons for a long time, but no one paid attention to him. Tang Yu took care of Liang Yin, while Liang Yin stood on the side, looking at Tang Yu in a daze. Hua Jin was full of anger, but he had nowhere to vent it, so he stomped his foot fiercely. This stomp was simply earth-shattering. Liang Yin came back to her senses and looked at him curiously. "What's wrong? I've been standing for too long. My legs are numb." Hua Jin ordered, "I want to eat small wontons." Liang Yin nodded. Just as she was about to order a bowl of wontons for him, Tang Yu stopped her and glared at Hua Jin. "Hua Jin, you have to understand that he's the assistant and you're the employer. How can an assistant direct the employer?" When Hua Jin heard this, he took a deep breath and furrowed his brows in anger. Liang Yin was also a little embarrassed. She smiled at Tang Yu and said, "Isn't she my cousin? Even if they are relatives, they can't do whatever they want, right?" Hua Jin wanted to hit him. Liang Yin also felt a headache coming on. Why were the two of them so at odds? He was born with a bad temper. Hua Jin snorted angrily and said to Liang Yin, "I want to eat wontons." Although Liang Yin was a little unhappy with Hua Jin's commanding tone, she still nodded obediently and replied, "Got it. I'll get it for you." With that, she said to Tang Yu, "Wait for me in your seat." When Liang Yin passed by Hua Jin, she said meaningfully, "You asked me to recognize my identity. Similarly, you have to recognize yours, don't you?" "What do you mean?" "Right now, I'm Hua Jin. I'm a celebrity. You're my assistant. You should take care of me." Liang Yin said and returned Hua Jin's warning to him. "Remember, don't do it again." With that, she walked away expressionlessly. Hua Jin's mouth stiffened. Good. This wretched girl. Now she knows how to bicker with him. Not simple. Hua Jin didn't say anything and sat down in his seat. Tang Yu glanced at him and suddenly said, "You seem to be a little prejudiced against me." "Prejudiced?" Tang Yu said again. "I think you don't like me. If I didn't know better, I would think that there's some deep hatred between us." Chapter 38:30. Hua Jin narrowed his eyes. A hypocritical smile appeared on his face. "Of course it's because he's prejudiced against you. Don't look at how well Hua Jin treats you." "Humph. Do you think he wants to talk to you?" "He looks down on small-time celebrities like you who do whatever it takes to become famous." Tang Yu's expression changed, but he was a little suspicious, because, based on his understanding of Hua Jin, it seemed that Hua Jin would really say that. Usually, when they were on set, he could tell that Hua Jin did not like him. He didn't know why, but overnight he became more peaceful with him. But, while Tang Yu was still thinking, Liang Yin came back with a small wonton. "Here. Yours." She put the wonton heavily in front of Hua Jin. Her tone was not good. Some of the soup splashed out. Fortunately, Hua Jin avoided it in time. Otherwise, the back of his hand would have splashed. Liang Yin said, "Eat." Hua Jin let out a muffled snort and ignored her. He picked up the spoon and started eating in silence. However, when Liang Yin turned her head and faced Tang Yu, her tone suddenly calmed down. "You seem to like eating custard buns?" "Yeah. But I remember when you were doing a live broadcast, you said your favorite food was soy milk and fried dough sticks." Tang Yu was a little surprised. "You've seen my live broadcast?" Liang Yin quickly said, "I saw it once by chance." "Haha, that's just a casual remark. At that time, I was acting in a web drama. The character in it liked to eat soy milk and fried dough sticks. So, no matter what answer, it's right to lean on the character. It's good for publicity, and it's good for fans to be immersed in the character." Liang Yin was a little disappointed when she heard this. "Are all celebrity interviews fake?" "Not all of them. It depends on how the company packaged you." Tang Yu said again, "Senior Hua Jin, you've been in the industry for so many years. You should know more about this." Liang Yin asked tentatively, "Then, what's your ideal type?" "Ideal type? It's when you say what kind of girl you like during the live broadcast." "Oh, that." Tang Yu smiled and said, "Actually, I don't know what my ideal type is. Anyway, it must be beautiful and have a good figure." "Then you said you've never been in love. How is that possible?" Tang Yu disagreed. "That's what the company told me. Actually, I had 3 girlfriends when I was in school, but they all ended without any results. Later, when I entered the entertainment industry, the company explicitly forbade me from dating. So I've been single for a long time." Liang Yin looked a little stunned. However, there was disappointment in his eyes. She was disappointed because it turned out that the idol in her heart was also a liar. Everything that he had shown was planned by the company, and everything was done step by step. Suddenly, he felt that it was somewhat ironic, because in some interviews, Tang Yu said that he never lied and was a very honest and reliable man. Now it seemed ironic. Hua Jin also noticed the change in Liang Yin's expression. Suddenly, he smirked and pretended to ask casually, "You said you've been single for a long time, but actually, it's just in spirit, right?" "What do you mean?" Liang Yin and Tang Yu asked in unison. Hua Jin deliberately mystified. "I won't say it. Even if I say it, you won't admit it." Chapter 38:31. Hua Jin took a deep look at Tang Yu and said indifferently, "I saw 2 female fans enter your room some time ago. They didn't come out for 2 days and 2 nights. It looks like the battle was very intense. When Liang Yin heard this, she was about to say, "Impossible." But Hua Jin suddenly pressed her hand down and warned her with his eyes. Tang Yu was obviously not surprised when he heard this. He thought it was something serious. However, he didn't deny it. Therefore, the entire crew was well aware of this matter. That day, when he brought the 2 female fans back to the hotel, he bumped into Hua Jin. Tang Yu didn't know that the Hua Jin in front of him and Liang Yin had exchanged souls. So, in front of Hua Jin, he was too lazy to quibble. "So what?" Tang Yu said lightly. "Anyway, it's consensual. Besides, we're both adults. There's no need to avoid any physical needs. Filming in the crew for so long. As a star, you can't have a girlfriend. But I'm not that famous, so there's no paparazzi waiting for me. Senior Hua Jin, it must be very hard. With so many paparazzi waiting for you day and night for big news, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to have such luck. Haha." Saying this, Tang Yu seriously declared to Liang Yin, "I'm just joking. Senior Hua Jin, please don't mind." Hua Jin was very disdainful. He put his arm around Liang Yin's shoulder and retorted, "Do you think our Hua Jin is like you? Anyway, our Hua Jin would risk his life to date. He wouldn't be like you, sleeping with fans." Liang Yin couldn't listen to it anymore and suddenly stood up. The sound of the chair's feet sliding on the tiles was very ear-piercing. Tang Yu and Hua Jin were both stunned and looked at her in surprise. Liang Yin pursed her lips and realized that she had lost her composure. She quickly said, I didn't sleep well last night, so I don't have much of an appetite. I'm going back to the hotel to rest." With that, she left. When Hua Jin saw her leave, how could he let her go back alone? But he was still hungry. Thus, he swallowed a few small wontons and chased after her. When he reached the door, he grabbed Liang Yin's wrist and said in surprise, "What are you doing? Are you angry?" However, Liang Yin flung his hand away and turned her face to the side without saying anything. When Hua Jin saw this, he understood. "Don't tell me you're disappointed after hearing what I said just now?" Liang Yin turned around and asked seriously, "Let me ask you, is everything you said just now true?" "Of course. You can go to the crew and ask around. Everyone knows about this. Those who don't know, it's because Tang Yu isn't famous, so no one paid attention to him." When Liang Yin heard this, her face darkened and her heart was about to break. She never thought that her idol, Tang Yu, would actually sleep with fans in private. How could he do such a shameless thing? It was too shocking. It was also too disappointing. This was something that she couldn't understand no matter what. This was a matter of principle and character. How could Tang Yu do this? It was simply too much. Liang Yin was a little disappointed. Hua Jin naturally saw this obvious disappointment. It's right to be disappointed. This kind of person doesn't deserve to be an idol. Chapter 38-32. Hua Jin was amused by her reaction and chased after her. Seeing that she was walking so fast, he said gloomily, "Why are you walking so fast? Can you walk slower? Your legs are so long." Liang Yin immediately said, "These are your legs, not mine." Hua Jin snorted coldly when he heard that. "They're yours now." Liang Yin pursed her lips but didn't say anything. Hua Jin saw her expression and knew what she was disappointed about. He smiled and said, "Why, have you given up? The male idol in your heart may look like a gentleman on the surface and is a high-quality idol, but in fact, he's no different from a normal man." Liang Yin was already upset, and with Hua Jin fanning the flames, she became even angrier. She said angrily, "What about you?" Hua Jin was confused when he saw that she was pointing the arrow at him. What do you mean by that? Since you said that celebrities are all like this, they may look like high-quality idols on the surface, but in fact, they're no different from a normal man. Celebrities will also make the same mistakes that normal people make. What about you?" Hua Jin didn't say anything at once. Liang Yin asked again, "Do you sleep with your fans?" "Please, there are only fans who want to sleep with me. There are no fans who I want to sleep with." Hua Jin said again, "I won't do such a vulgar thing." "Why?" Liang Yin didn't understand. If they're your fans, they should be looking forward to having intimate contact with you. Although it's normal for men and women to love each other, it should at least be based on two people liking each other and understanding each other, right? After a pause, Hua Jin's gaze went blank. The Hua Jin they like is not the real me. What are you talking about? Liang Yin couldn't help but stop in her tracks and look at him in surprise. I don't understand what you're talking about. If the fan doesn't like you, then who do they like? Do they like ghosts? Hua Jin laughed self-deprecatingly. Every time I film a show, I gain a few million fans. These fans don't like the real me at all. They like the character, they like the persona. As for me, I just use the persona in the show to make them like me. The reason why they like me is because of my looks. I can give them fantasies. Hua Jin paused for a moment before continuing. Imagine that I'm their boyfriend, husband, or even their ideal lover. As for me, as our ideal lover, I don't have the right to be in a relationship. If I do, I'll lose my fans. In fact, some of my fans might even jump off a building. When that happens, the media will blame me and force me to bear the blame. Then why did you become an actor? Because this is my job. Hua Jin smiled. Since you've accepted it, there's no need to complain. Even if the fans like your character, you are still an actor. You can disappoint anyone, but you can't disappoint your fans. That's a nice thing to say. Liang Yin said, I remember that you have a lot of dark history. Isn't there a rumor that you've been slept with by the higher-ups? When Hua Jin heard this, he frowned. Who said that? Sister V said it. Sister V? Hua Jin felt that this name sounded familiar. Who's Sister V? Chapter 38-33. Liang Yin had promised to keep it a secret. The problem was that if Hua Jin found out who Sister V was, it would be disadvantageous to her. Sister V was Tang Yu's manager. Her name was Ivy, and she was known as Sister V. Tang Yu had several fan circles that had always been managed by Sister V. Sometimes Sister V would post some gossip in the fan circle. Although the names of the people involved were hidden, one could still tell who they were based on their characteristics. Sister V had said that Hua Jin had debuted by using unspoken rules. This matter was no longer a secret in the circle. Everyone knew about it. With his powerful resources, Hua Jin used to be domineering, arrogant, and unreasonable in the crew. He even looked down on his seniors. However, for some reason, Hua Jin had changed a lot and his temper had become much better. No one knew what had happened to him. Hua Jin did not say anything, but his face was especially livid. On the way back to the hotel, he did not say anything and remained silent. Liang Yin could not be bothered to say anything to him. Both of them had their own thoughts. After returning to the hotel, Liang Yin fell asleep, while Hua Jin lay on the sofa, wanting to catch up on some sleep. Liang Yin seemed to have been woken up by something. She opened her eyes and heard that it was Hua Jin. It was the sound of enduring pain, depression, suffering. Liang Yin sat up, feeling a little puzzled. She walked over and saw Hua Jin curled up on the sofa, his body trembling. It was obvious that he was in pain. What's wrong? Liang Yin felt a little strange and nudged him gently. Hua Jin turned his head and saw that it was her. He groaned weakly and said, My stomach hurts. Why do you have a stomach ache? Liang Yin frowned strangely. Did you eat something? I only had wontons this morning. Then why does it hurt? Could it be diarrhea? Hua Jin shook his head. I don't feel like having diarrhea. You don't have stomach pain, do you? Stomach ache? No, I don't. Hua Jin thought about it and agreed. A stomachache didn't seem to feel like this either. His stomach hurt once, and it felt like his intestines were twisted together. But this time it didn't seem to be in the stomach, but in the lower abdomen. Liang Yin's eyebrows twitched. She seemed to have thought of something. She calculated the date and asked, You? Don't tell me you're on your period? Menstruation? Hua Jin blushed and sat up. However, when he sat up, he clearly felt that something was wrong. Oh no! Hua Jin stood up and looked down. He couldn't see anything just by looking at it. He turned around and looked at the sofa. It didn't seem to be stained by anything, but He clearly felt that something was wrong. Liang Yin immediately said, "Go to the bathroom and take a look." Hua Jin's expression was a little strange. He looked at Liang Yin meaningfully and asked suspiciously, "You don't have menstrual cramps?" Liang Yin blushed as well, but she insisted, "How is that possible? I don't have any history of menstrual cramps." Hua Jin couldn't be bothered to ask any more questions. He went to the bathroom and didn't come out for a long time. Liang Yin walked to the bathroom door. She leaned against the door and calculated the time with her fingers. She suddenly realized that her period should be here by now. She knocked on the door gently and asked curiously, "How is it? Is it here?" Chapter 38-34. Hua Jin's voice was very low, but it was obvious that he was not paying attention. Liang Yin thought for a while and suddenly recalled something. "If it hurts, could it be related to the cold water I soaked in earlier? I fell into the water and then the swimming pool. After so many shocks, I guess. That's the main reason for my period pain." "So that's the reason?" Hua Jin frowned. No wonder when he was in the production team, he often saw many actresses whose faces were still frighteningly pale even with a thick layer of blush on. They had no choice but to hug warm water as if they were hugging the source of their life. It turned out that drinking hot water really had its uses. What should I do now? Hua Jin was at his wit's end and did not know what to do. Liang Yin said, "Just put on a sanitary pad and drink more hot water." Hua Jin suddenly thought of something and said mockingly, "You women are still blaming men for telling girls to drink more hot water when they're on their period. In fact, if you were a man, you'd tell girls to drink more hot water too. How shallow." Liang Yin defended herself. "You're not my girlfriend. How do you expect me to care about you?" This stupid woman still dared to argue with him. "Whose stomach is hurting for?" Hua Jin said resentfully, "I'm hurting for you." "What do you mean by hurting for me? Isn't this caused by you? If it weren't for you, would I be in such a sorry state?" Hua Jin was filled with resentment. If it weren't for Liang Yin, this situation would not have happened. He was probably the only straight man in the world who would experience something as magical as menstruation. It was too embarrassing. However, the current him had no time to think about the pain in his stomach. He held his forehead and did not know what to do. Liang Yin did not want to make a fuss about this matter. She looked around and asked suspiciously, "Do you have sanitary pads here? Do you think?" Hua Jin was angry and in pain. He was so angry that he could not form a coherent sentence. "Do you think I would have such things? How could this woman be so stupid?" When Liang Yin heard this, she finally reacted in hindsight. "That's right. Why would there be such a thing in Hua Jin's room?" Liang Yin said, "Then I'll go buy it for you." Wait. When Hua Jin heard this, if it weren't for the fact that he couldn't stand up, he would have pounced on the door in excitement. Liang Yin heard his miserable voice and thought that something had happened. She immediately became nervous. "What's wrong?" She was scared out of her wits. Hua Jin said weakly, "Are you going to buy it like this? Is there a problem?" Liang Yin asked in confusion, "Didn't you say that the film city is very safe and that there aren't any random people in there?" Cough. It wouldn't be good if the other actors and staff saw this. Even though the people in the film city might not expose this matter, Hua Jin thought about how these people would privately spread the news that he had personally gone to the supermarket to buy sanitary pads. Those who were a little smarter might guess that he was hiding a woman in his room or that he was buying it for someone else. Those who were a little stupid might even think that he had some perverted fetish. Get the other assistants to buy it. After hearing this, Liang Yin nodded. She walked into the living room and took Hua Jin's phone. She found the assistant's number in the phone book and dialed it. The call went through very quickly. She could tell that the assistant was still outside. Chapter 38-35. I just left the house. When Liang Yin heard this, she asked tentatively, "Can you come back for a while?" "What's wrong?" "It's like this. Didn't I hire a new assistant called Liang Yin?" Liang Yin felt awkward at the mention of her name. "She's on her period, so she doesn't have any ABC pads with her. I need you to bring one back." "I couldn't tell," the assistant said in surprise. "I didn't expect you to be so familiar with the brand of sanitary pads." You even know ABC. Liang Yin hurriedly said. Liang Yin was the one who told me. I don't know what it is either, but she told me to tell you that. She's shy and embarrassed to say that she only uses this brand. Okay, no problem. Give me 5 minutes. Oh, remember, I want both for day and night use. The bigger ones are the best. Understood. Liang Yin hung up awkwardly and returned to the bathroom door. She said softly with a red face, hang in there for a while. She'll bring it back soon. Hua Jin, who was inside, was half dead. He hugged his shoulders weakly and rolled his eyes. It hurt. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. How could it hurt so much? Hua Jin didn't know that being a woman was so painful. It hurts. He groaned a few times. Obviously, he couldn't take it anymore. When Liang Yin heard this, she felt an inexplicable sense of schadenfreude. Humph. What kind of pain is this? I'm considered lucky. This pain is only temporary and won't last forever. Some people will feel pain when they're born, whether they drink cold water or not, whether they're cold or not. You seem to be very proud of it. Of course, now that we've swapped places, no matter how painful it is, it has nothing to do with me. As she spoke, Liang Yin continued. If we don't switch, who knows, you might experience the pain of your first time and the pain of giving birth. Haha. Her words were undoubtedly provocative. However, she had clearly forgotten that Hua Jin was currently occupying her body. Hua Jin, however, was obviously dismissive. Instead, he continued, all right, then, tomorrow, I'll find a man and experience the pain of my first night. At the same time, if you're lucky, you can experience the pain of giving birth. When Liang Yin heard this, she became anxious and almost jumped up. How dare you? Do you think I dare? Hua Jin didn't seem to be afraid of her threat. Didn't you want me to experience it? Of course I'll do as you wish. Liang Yin blushed and retorted. I didn't want you to experience it. That's my body. You're not allowed to mess around. Otherwise, you'll sleep with my fans. Hua Jin paused and laughed mockingly. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but if you were a man, would you know what to do? Liang Yin blushed even more at his words. She was so angry that she turned her head and went back to the sofa. She hugged her arms and endured her anger. After a while, the assistant came back with sanitary pads and rang the doorbell. Liang Yin knew that the assistant had come back with the sanitary pads. She walked to the door unhappily and opened it. The assistant handed her the shopping bag from the supermarket. Here, I just bought it. The assistant took the receipt and passed the bag to her. The receipt had to be kept for reimbursement. Chapter 38-36. Liang Yin nodded and said, You can't take too many painkillers. The side effects are more severe. However, the assistant said, That's not true. I brought this painkiller back from Japan. The side effects are very, very small. Basically, there are no side effects. Oh, Liang Yin had never seen this type of painkiller called EVA before. However, this type of painkiller indeed didn't have any side effects. The assistant asked tentatively, I heard that Qin Zhou hired another assistant for you. But why is it the girl who fell into the water that day? Where is she now? I tidied up the room yesterday and was waiting for her to move in. I waited for a long time but didn't see her. I didn't want to disturb you, so I didn't come over to ask. Liang Yin reacted and didn't know how to answer. Indeed, there seemed to be a lot of inconveniences for the two of them to live under the same roof. However, such inconveniences didn't really make sense. Although they were a single man and a single woman, now that the genders were switched, there didn't seem to be much of a difference living together. Liang Yin said, Let's talk about it later. I'll send the things over to him first. Just as she finished speaking, the assistant called out to her. Hua Jin. Liang Yin turned her head and glanced at her. The assistant walked in quietly and asked cautiously, That girl called Liang Yin, could she be my what? Your lover? The assistant asked very ambiguously. It wasn't like this had never happened before. For celebrities, the more popular they were, the more they couldn't announce their relationships. However, humans had all kinds of emotions and desires. Sometimes, when a celebrity fell in love, in order to not announce it, they would turn their lover into their assistant and stick together every day. It was not only a dignified and legitimate relationship, but also a cover-up. However, most of the time it was male celebrities who would do this. Usually, if a female celebrity was in a relationship, most of her partners were rich and powerful people. At the very least, they would be contracted lovers in the industry. These so-called contracted lovers were many second- and third-tier celebrities or has-been celebrities who wanted to use their relationships to gain fame. Hence, the assistant suspected this. Liang Yin smiled and said, "How is that possible?" She said awkwardly, "Let's talk about other things later," Liang Yin said, holding the door frame. She was undoubtedly asking him to leave. When the assistant saw this, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. She walked out of the door in disappointment, and Liang Yin closed the door. The assistant outside the door looked displeased. That was jealousy, naked jealousy. Back then, she had spent a lot of money to become Hua Jin's assistant. She had used her connections and asked for favors. Finally, she got what she wanted and became her idol's assistant. There were different levels of assistants, such as administrative assistant, production assistant, personal assistant. She started out as an administrative assistant. An administrative assistant was only responsible for booking plane tickets, hotels, and other behind-the-scenes work. Usually, she wouldn't be able to meet celebrities. Finally, she got her chance. She used some underhanded means to get rid of Hua Jin's personal assistants one by one. Finally, she got what she wanted and became his personal assistant. Being able to become Hua Jin's assistant was something she didn't even dare to dream of, but she had always coveted it. Chapter 38-37. After all, she would be able to stay by her idol's side day and night and receive a hefty commission. She was the only one among the tens of millions of fans in Hua Jin's fan club. However, now an assistant had appeared out of nowhere and was even staying in the same room as Hua Jin. She was so jealous. What right did this Liang Yin have to have such special privileges? And she didn't. This new assistant had appeared out of nowhere and became Hua Jin's closest assistant. She was even staying in the same room as him. Liang Yin didn't expect this assistant to be jealous. She took the tampons and painkillers, walked to the bathroom door and knocked. "Hua Jin, I bought the things." After a long time, a weak voice came from the bathroom. "So much blood. Will I die?" Liang Yin didn't expect Hua Jin to ask such a question. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Holding back her laughter, she said, "Don't worry, I definitely won't die. I heard, if a person loses too much blood, they will go into shock or something." Liang Yin couldn't hold it in anymore. She held her stomach and laughed until tears came out of her eyes. Seeing her laugh, Hua Jin was so angry that his stomach hurt even more. He said angrily, What the F***ck are you laughing about? This is the first time I've heard of someone going into shock because of excessive blood loss." Hua Jin was so angry that he shouted at her. "Why didn't you tell me earlier that you were going to have your period?" "I forgot to say. How could I have predicted that something like this would happen?" Liang Yin quickly changed the topic. "All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Being a woman is like this. No matter how much you cry, you still have to feel pain when it's supposed to. However, your assistant was so considerate to buy painkillers. Drink some hot water after you eat and rest for a while." I don't know how to. Do you know how to wipe your butt?" "Yes." "Do you know how to apply band-aids?" "Yes." "Wipe it clean like you're wiping your butt. Then, stick the sanitary napkin on your underwear like a band-aid. Remember, the side with the adhesive is facing your underwear. Don't stick it in the wrong direction." "Humph, I know." Liang Yin handed the bag in and Hua Jin took it. After a while, he opened the door and walked out. His face was extremely pale. When Liang Yin saw this, she didn't say anything. She helped him to the sofa like Empress Dowager Cixi and let him lie down. After a while, she put a blanket under him, boiled some water, filled a hot water bottle, and covered Hua Jin's stomach. She poured some hot water and fed him the painkiller. "Do you feel better?" Hua Jin nodded. However, It could be seen from his knitted brows that his stomach was still in pain. Although the effect of the medicine was fast, it was impossible to see immediate effects as soon as one ate it. Painkillers take effect slowly. Wait for a while more and the effect will be felt. Liang Yin saw that Hua Jin's face was pale as he lay on the sofa. His brows were knitted together and it was obvious that he was in extreme pain. She was a little upset and also a little guilty. Hence, she tried to reach out her hand and gently pressed on his stomach, rubbing it carefully. When Hua Jin saw this, he narrowed his eyes and sized her up. Then, he closed his eyes and fell asleep peacefully. The doorbell suddenly rang again. Liang Yin got up and walked to the door. When she opened the door, she saw her assistant standing outside. What's wrong? Chapter 38:38. It turned out that the assistant had taken this matter to heart. What right did this Liang Yin have to share a room with Hua Jin? Thus, the assistant secretly reported this matter to Qin Zhou. That was what she had said over the phone. No matter how close they were, they couldn't be in the same room. Although it was relatively safe in the film studio and there weren't many messy people around, this wasn't absolute. If the paparazzi took photos of this, it would inevitably lead to gossip. Now that Hua Jin was on the rise and had a huge fan base, if this matter were to spread, it would have a negative impact. Qin Zhou didn't say anything. The assistant's words weren't without reason. Although he understood that the two of them sharing a room might be Hua Jin revising the script for Liang Yin, it wasn't a long-term solution. Thus, he booked the room next to Hua Jin's and gave it to Hua Jin. The assistant told Liang Yin about this matter. Liang Yin said, "Oh, then let's wait until Hua Jin wakes up." "What?" "Oh no." Liang Yin immediately said, Wait until Liang Yin wakes up. I said something wrong. I was wondering." Only then did the assistant regain her composure. Liang Yin turned around and bit her finger nervously. She had actually let it slip. Assistant Xiaoqi walked over and saw Hua Jin lying on the sofa. She muttered, "Why is she lying there? She's on her period. She's not feeling well. Even if she's not feeling well, she can't just lie there and do nothing. There's so much to do and I'm the only one doing it." Liang Yin frowned and walked to Hua Jin's side. She squatted down and said helplessly, "Her stomach hurts. Let's take a break." Seeing Hua Jin rubbing the new assistant's stomach so gently, she felt even more jealous. You can't spoil her too much. She's your assistant after all. If you spoil her like this, how can she act like an assistant? Liang Yin didn't say anything. "Oh, by the way, the room has already been booked. When the time comes, let her move her luggage to another room and live with you." "How improper would that be?" Liang Yin nodded absent-mindedly and said, "You go out first. When he wakes up, I'll tell him." The assistant nodded and walked away reluctantly, looking back 3 times with every step. In the afternoon, Hua Jin finally woke up. Liang Yin told him about it. Hua Jin didn't have any objections. It was more convenient for one person to have a room. At least he didn't have to sleep on the sofa. This was what he was happy to see. Liang Yin also accompanied him to buy some daily necessities. They would be staying on set for a long time in the future, so it would be inconvenient if they went back to their rented place to get the necessities. Thus, all the necessities of daily life were settled in the film studio. Hua Jin asked her if it would be inconvenient if she didn't go home. Liang Yin said that her parents wouldn't care whether she went home or not. Hua Jin raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Liang Yin was a little surprised by his reaction. "That's strange. Your reaction seems to be different from others." "How is it different?" "Every time people ask about my parents, they will persuade me that there are no parents in the world who don't love their children. They even say that as long as it's my parents, they will dote on me." Chapter 38:39. That's because they don't know that there are really irresponsible fathers and mothers in this world. As he said this, he curled his lips. She didn't know if it was mockery or something else. However, the desolation in his eyes quickly disappeared. When Liang Yin heard this, she couldn't help but feel a little strange. From the way he said it, it felt as if he could empathize with her. However, she didn't ask for details. Since it was just next door, Hua Jin moved into the room after he returned from shopping for the items. Xiaoqi entered the room right after Liang Yin left. The door was ajar, so she groped her way in. Liang Yin. Hua Jin woke up with a start. When he looked up and saw her, he said unhappily, "Why didn't you knock before coming in? Isn't the door unlocked? Even if it's unlocked, you still have to knock before coming in. This is etiquette." Xiaoqi's face immediately turned cold. She said disapprovingly, "You're a newbie, but you're quite arrogant." Ha! When Hua Jin heard this, he curled his lips and asked in return, "This has nothing to do with arrogance. This has to do with quality." For some reason, Xiaoqi gave him a different feeling all of a sudden. In the past, when Xiaoqi was by his side, she was polite, humble, and polite. Now that he had become Liang Yin, this Xiaoqi seemed to have become a little high and mighty. Hua Jin asked calmly, "Why are you looking for me?" Xiaoqi didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "I want to change rooms with you." "What?" When Hua Jin heard this, he was a little surprised. "Why do you want to change rooms with me?" "I'll change rooms if I want to. Why are you asking so many questions?" Hua Jin was increasingly unhappy with her attitude. "This is my room. Don't I even have the right to ask questions?" "Okay. Then I'll ask you." Xiaoqi asked, "What's your relationship with Hua Jin?" When Hua Jin heard this, he said expressionlessly, "He's my employer and I'm his assistant. That's our relationship." "Humph. I think your relationship with him isn't as simple as it seems. I don't know how Master Qin Zhou allocated your room. He actually allocated your room right beside his. I don't know how you did it." "Oh, don't tell me you're thinking that you're close to him first." The more Hua Jin heard, the more he was confused. Although he didn't understand what Xiaoqi meant, it was definitely not friendly. "I don't know what you're trying to say." "You do." Xiaoqi suddenly became aggressive. "You like Hua Jin, don't you?" Hua's Xiaoqi's. This question was too difficult to answer. Xiaoqi's Xiaoqi. He suddenly came to a realization. This Xiaoqi, could she be? "Oh. What? What did you say?" "Maybe you're jealous because Hua Jin treats me so well. Is that why you want to ostracize me?" It had to be said that Hua Jin was very observant. Xiaoqi snorted coldly. "Who am I to be jealous of you? Who do you think you are? I'm Hua Jin's personal assistant. Moreover, I've been taking care of him for 3 years. Who do you think you are?" Chapter 3840. Limited Tolerance? Xiaoqi burst out laughing, as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. "If you don't even have this bit of tolerance, how can you be a celebrity's assistant? If an assistant can't even take this little bit of humiliation, you'd better get out of here." Hua Jin was furious when he heard this, but he didn't show it on his face. Also, Xiaoqi paused and asked, "You're saying that I'm ostracizing you. Why don't you take a look at your own status? Is there a need for me to ostracize you? Don't tell me you're jealous that I can be with Liang." Realizing that he had almost let the cat out of the bag, he pursed his lips and quickly corrected himself. "Don't tell me you're jealous that I can be in the same room as Hua Jin?" "Ha! So what if you're in the same room?" Xiaoqi snorted and said coldly, "I've even slept on the same bed as Hua Jin." Hua Jin frowned when he heard this. He couldn't help but feel disgusted. He hadn't expected to see Xiaoqi in such a state after his soul had swapped with Liang Yin's by a freak combination of factors. In the past, in Hua Jin's eyes, Xiaoqi was very obedient, sensible, and hardworking. As an assistant, she was willing to do anything, no matter if it was dirty or tiring work. Moreover, in front of him, Xiaoqi always appeared to be very quiet and gentle. No matter how difficult it was to deal with reporters or fans, she was always able to deal with them calmly. It was just that. Now that he was in Liang Yin's shoes, he saw another side of Xiaoqi. Jealous, sarcastic, and even ostracizing newcomers. Hua Jin couldn't help but feel curious. Was she usually like this? Hua Jin was a little suspicious about Xiaoqi's true colors. "All right, let's stop here. If I go overboard, you won't be able to avoid complaining to Hua Jin that I'm bullying newcomers." Hua Jin cursed silently in his heart. What do you mean by complaining? It's obviously the truth. Okay? Hua Jin didn't say anything. Xiaoqi took it as him admitting defeat. She said coldly, if you know what's good for you, quickly change rooms with me. As a new assistant, I'm afraid that you won't be able to take care of many things. After all, I've been by Hua Jin's side for so many years. I'm sure you won't be able to take care of things as well as me. So, hurry up and change rooms with me. Have you asked for Hua Jin's permission? He will definitely agree. Previously, if it weren't for the fact that we didn't have a room next door, I wouldn't have been one floor away from him. Now, since there's a room next door, give it up. To Hua Jin, being an assistant is all the same. It's just taking care of his daily life. What's the difference? Hua Jin smiled and said meaningfully, even if you want to change rooms with me, you have to ask Hua Jin if he agrees. After all, this room is mine now. You can't just change it as you wish. Alright, just you wait. Naturally, Xiaoqi didn't believe it. She left the room and went to the room next door. She knocked on the door and soon, footsteps could be heard from inside. Liang Yin opened the door and saw Xiaoqi standing at the door. She frowned slightly. Although she didn't show it on her face, deep down, she was annoyed. Why was this assistant a little too attentive? She had intended to sleep. Chapter 38:41. When she thought of what Hua Jin had mentioned, she recalled Tang Yu's nonchalant attitude when they talked about it. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed. She couldn't accept that Tang Yu was such an idol. The more she thought about it, the worse she felt. She didn't sleep well either. In a short period of time, she had a lot of nightmares. After that, she was so busy because of Hua Jin's menstrual period. Now she was exhausted. Xiaoqi smiled sweetly and said coquettishly, Master Jin, can I come in? She had always addressed Hua Jin as Master Jin. When Liang Yin heard this, she didn't let her in immediately. Instead, she asked through the door, what's the matter? I'm going to sleep. It's like this, Xiaoqi said bashfully. Isn't the room next to yours empty? I was thinking, why don't I change rooms with the new assistant called Liang Yin? She's a new assistant, so she definitely can't take care of you. I'll stay next to you and take care of everything. What do you think? Xiaoqi was full of anticipation for Hua Jin's approval. However, when Liang Yin heard this, her brows furrowed again. She wasn't willing to accept Xiaoqi's suggestion, because Hua Jin had to stay next to her. If anything happened, she could find him quickly by just one room. It was more convenient. Now that they were in the same boat, it wouldn't be too much to say that they were in the same boat. She immediately said, forget it. It's better to let Liang Yin stay next to me. Xiaoqi was stunned, so much so that the smile on her face froze. Why? Am I not taking good care of you? No. Liang Yin didn't know how to explain it. She pondered for a moment and asked tentatively, why do you have to stay next to me? Am I not taking good care of you? Liang Yin exclaimed. She didn't know how to explain it, so she simply said bluntly, I still prefer Liang Yin to live next door. Without waiting for Xiaoqi to reply, she pretended to yawn and said to Xiaoqi, I'm so sleepy. Let's talk tomorrow. After saying that, Liang Yin laughed and closed the door without waiting for Xiaoqi to say anything. With her back against the door, Liang Yin muttered with a dark expression, why is this assistant even harder to deal with than the fans? Earlier, when she went to the supermarket to buy some daily necessities for Hua Jin, she was chased by a few fans. However, after signing and taking photos with her, they stopped pestering her. Could it be that Xiaoqi was also a die-hard fan of Hua Jin, and that was why she lurked beside Hua